You know what time it is. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and gals. This show is highly educational, so make sure to put on your thinking domes. And if there are some explicit content, such as language, earmuffs for the little ones. I want to welcome all of you tonight to this Thursday's edition of Talking Shh 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 I.T with Glenn and Tony. Take it away, guys.
Oh, I think I got a yip out of Bandit there. Do headphones count as earmuffs?
They do when they're not plugged in. How you doing, Tony?
I feel like I have earmuffs on all the time.
Me too. I spend many hours a day with headphones on, but that's a good thing.
Hey, did you hear some of those pop the metal samples that are in there? They're
I
coming
did.
in fast and furious.
Yeah, it sounded good. Some
Yeah,
good picks
yeah.
in there too.
I'm
Some
liking
good
every
songs to
single one.
reimagine. Yeah, because some of it, part of it is about how you do with the reimagining, and the other part is which song you reimagine in that style.
Yeah, they're
And
gonna
there's some
have
really good choices.
a hell of a time going through that judging.
Absolutely. But I look forward to it. There should be definitely a lot of good entries there.
Yeah, and they still got about a week and a half. 23rd, I think, is the cutoff.
I think that's about right. We'll have to double check with the boss. Wasn't watching the date too closely. Didn't have too many gigs this week, so it's been a nice, relaxing week a little bit as far as that stuff goes.
Yes, the boss says yes.
Yes,
23rd.
perfect. Always good to double check. Been doing some more with the artwork lately. We're going to look at some of that stuff later just to check in on that. I got some running in the background there. Like similar to the ones that are here, but actually the newer engine for the ones that are in the image that's around here. So this is one. These are the ones that were from the Google collab. Was that a few months ago now? And then this one just recently started using. So some different results where especially the faces have gotten a lot better. Where back then all the faces were distorted, and now the AI is doing a better job because it's using a separate AI to upsample the faces than it was for the full image. And I haven't even started messing with some of the other things like the in painting and the out painting and getting other features that are going on with that. But that's going to be some fun stuff to dive into as well.
But now you're doing more testing with the prompts too and
Exactly.
experimenting with what it can come up with.
Yep. Matching together different styles. Like you can pick multiple artists, and the style of the image that you get at the end is going to be a mix of those artist styles, trying to get some of the characteristics of each into the image, which I think is pretty cool. A good way of mixing things around. You can do the same thing with whether it's photographic or whether it's a digital painting or whether it's a drawing or a pencil line art. You can pick styles like that. One of the other sites that we looked at briefly was, I believe it was called Promptomania. I'll have to double check that, but it was one that can also show you what your prompt that you're starting to look at, and you can go look at, like, for example, different camera styles, whether it's a close shot or whether it's a medium shot or whether it's a full shot, or all those kinds of terms that you would use in photography. And you can use f-stop language. You can tell it what size lens to use so that it'll get an idea, because it knows what the images in the data set that it was trained on, any that were tagged with those kinds of tags, it would know, and it would try to reproduce that style of image. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, not only does it help you to learn the prompts for the AI, it can help you to learn photography techniques
Yep.
because it shows you like different lens styles and
Mhm.
different techniques.
Yep. And shows you a little thumbnail result of an example. So if you're talking about, for example, those full shot, half shot, close up, things like that, you can
Fish eyes, wide angles.
right. And it shows you what the result would be with that. So you can be like, ooh, even if you don't know what you're looking for, you can see here's all the options. You're like, ooh, I like that one, and then you can start getting experience with using the different prompts or the different text in the prompts to get those kinds of results.
Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh,
Ah.
a piece of candy.
Mm-hmm. Always good. I made one that was a candy store, and everything was all pink and blue and like bubblegummy everywhere. I was like, wow,
Oh, that's SR's wet dream.
candy everywhere, huh? Now there was a
Especially if you mix it with the music store. A
Sure.
candy music store would be the ultimate store.
Nice. Get the those big things of jelly beans, or you just like get the big scooper, get a whole scoop of jelly beans of whichever type. Love that. One of those homemade candy stores where they have like the kind of chocolate bark stuff that they have that's all
Oh yeah,
homemade.
I like the bark.
Yeah, bark is good. I think the one time it was with like the peppermint, so it had like the candy canes basically crushed up in the bark. I was like, oh man, that's the way to
Yeah,
go.
yeah. Around Christmas is when I get to get a supply.
Hmm. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that we were talking about probably last week, I think, was a little bit about sight reading, right? We were talking about being able to identify certain things more quickly when looking at music that's not tablature notation necessarily. And we're not going to get too much into the deep technical details of sheet music in this case, but more just looking at like
Well,
in the case of this.
it'd be nice just to get some basic tips on how to improve your sight reading. I mean, I've been trying to sight read since the 80s, and because I never really practice it,
Mhm.
it never really stuck. It's all I'm
Yeah.
always doing the every good boy deserves fudge.
Mhm.
Which note am I at? And it's a slow process.
Yeah.
But since I've been watching it live while you play on Ridiculous,
Mhm.
I'm noticing how just watching it in action helps to make it simpler to start saying, oh, I recognize the C in the staff now.
Exactly. And especially when it's happening in real time, because then once you see that, like if you see that as, and that's one of the ones is that's a root, a third, and a fifth in the key that we're playing in. So if we were playing, like in this case, C major, so this is all white notes. And if I just move that root, third, and fifth up, that's a D minor now, but it's the same shape on the staff, right? Because we're not using any sharps and flats in the key of C major. But I can move that same shape up all the white notes, and the whole way up, it's going to look the same as far as the relation between the notes are always going to look like, three in between the lines or three on the lines, all stacked like that. And that's stacked thirds, whether you're playing a minor chord or a major chord or even that B half diminished chord. Those are all a root, some kind of a third, and some kind of a fifth. In this case, it's a root, a flat
And
third, and a flat.
I like how with Meticulous,
Mhm.
you see the notes on the right side.
Mhm.
Again, it helps me to pick things up faster
Yep.
when there's this visual aid.
Mhm. Yeah, and that is good.
For
That is
anybody
quite
who's
helpful.
trying to learn how to sheet read, Meticulous is a fantastic tool
Yeah.
to just get comfortable with it.
Because even if you just hit two notes, like there's a C and it tells you, okay, that's a C, and in this case it's C5, so this would be C4, and the lower one is C3, and all the way down to C2, all the way up to C7 is how far I can stretch on this particular keyboard of mine, which is a 61 key. If it was an 88 key keyboard, we would have even more beyond those. But at this
I
point,
got an 88.
yeah, he's got it, and actually I have an 88 over here, but I don't have it plugged into the MIDI controller right now, so this one is
I
the one
got
that's
an
connected.
88 over here. I got an 88 over there.
Nice. Yeah. So we're going with that. And then again, as you're going up and down, it's looking the same because it's a root, a third, and a five. These are just stacked thirds for intervals. But if you just hit any two notes,
Now,
like this and this, it tells you that's a C major six because I'm just hitting a root and an A, which is a sixth.
another thing that always kind of threw me off when it comes to staffs, when you change your key, you
Yeah.
get those symbols in the front, which up until recently I didn't realize the symbols in the front were actually showing how many sharps and how many flats are part of the key,
Right. The
part of
key
the
signature.
scale.
Yep. And let me get my ridiculous back up over
So
there.
like right now you're in C major, so all you see is the bass clef and the G clef. But if you were to change that, say to A major has what? One sharp?
Three.
Oh yeah, three. So
Yep.
there should be three sharps in the staff.
And there they are.
I don't know why that never clicked for me in the old days,
Mhm.
but the other night when you did change it and I'm looking and I just realized, I'm like, son of a bitch, it's actually telling me how many sharps I have in the
Yep.
scale.
Yep. It's telling you which 12 of the 12 notes that we have between the C and the B, of those chromatic notes, which seven
And
are we using for this
it's
chord.
actually showing them on the staff.
Yep.
Another thing that didn't click with me till I looked
Now, the other thing is that just because we picked those 7 notes, those are the ones that will show up as natural, the ones that will show up with no markings in front or behind them. So in this case, if we're playing A major, if we're playing an A major chord, that's using a C sharp in the middle, right? But it doesn't look like it's sharp on the actual chord that we're playing, because you can see over to the left where it's got that third, it's got the sharps listed on the left there. You can see it's on that line. So it's telling you it's that line right there is the one that's got to be sharp. If you were to play that C without it, you'll see that natural symbol in front of it. So it's saying, no, in the key, it should be that sharp one, but you're playing the natural one. It would be like that.
So when you see something like a natural, you're adjusting the scale.
Right. And the other one would be if you were playing something that's flatted now, or in this case, sharp. They're showing that as a D sharp because we're in the key.
And you have that you have that additional feedback in that top window where it actually shows you the chord name.
Yep. In this case, it's saying it's a tritone, so that's the one that's between the 5 and the 4. So that would be the 5th. That would be the 4th. That's the tritone. And it always sounds awkward. That's the most awkward sounding interval, pretty much. That one and the ones right next to each other are the 2 most dissonant sounding intervals.
Good to see you.
What's happening, Uni? It's always good to see. And that's one of those things, again, we're playing an A now. So if we were just playing any kind of all the notes in the key, even though 3 of them are sharps, they don't show as sharps in the sheet music there because they're already showing on the left as being sharped naturally for this key. But if we were doing something extra, it would actually show up.
Just looking there, I now know like C sharp, F sharp, G sharp on my A.
Yep.
Really, I see it that quickly now.
Exactly.
25 years, I finally figured it out.
And if I went up the keys, the chords for A major, you would start with A major and then that one, right? And as we're going up, making sure that we're hitting all the right sharps and flats. And they all show up. None of them have the modification symbol in front of them because they're already sharped. If they're sharped because they are in the key sharped, and otherwise they are just a regular key.
Now, other than that's the G clef, right?
The treble clef on the top. Treble clef, yep. Okay, and then the bass clef on the bottom.
Bass clef. What other clefs would you ever see besides
those two?
You see
the alto clef, which looks kind of weird. It's almost like a W, like a sideways W or brackets of some kind, and you would see it like in between these 2. But it basically has to do with this, the middle C. Right now it's showing as a natural because we're in
the alto clef.
Certain instruments or certain vocalists. It's
like maybe brasses.
It represents the notes, like the way we have our staff lines written here. Or actually, I guess it would be down here. All the different staff lines. These are the treble clef ones, and then the ones that are the bass clef are down that way. And so that's all 10 of those. But the one in the middle is that middle C. With the alto clef, it's representing a different range. And I'm actually not sure what that range is because I almost never see it in the music that I deal with. But in like orchestral music, certain instruments would be written for alto clef, or certain vocal arrangements would be written for that clef. And they would have a different symbol. Like these 2, like you recognize that top one is the treble clef symbol. Yeah. That bottom one is the bass clef symbol. And the other one, again, is the one that doesn't look like either of those. And you'd be like, what is that? That's probably the only other one you would normally see would be the alto clef, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody in the audience knows of another clef that you would see. But that's one that I've seen, like I said, just a couple of different places and only in certain arrangements of music. Most likely you would see it this way, where you're looking at, especially for like a piano, because you're dealing with the full range. And once you get beyond the top lines there, you start to get the additional staff lines added above that to show you where you are or what notes you're hitting in there.
And they're really using these clefs so that they can fit the majority of the notes into the middle without having to go drastically up.
Yep. And also sometimes once they get up to these that are way up top, like if they wanted to represent now these even an octave higher, rather than being way up there in sheet music, a lot of times they would have it down here and show a little line saying 8 VA, saying to move up an octave.
Oh, that's what the VA is.
Yep. It's saying bring that up an octave, or it's usually up an octave, but I guess it could also be down an octave if you're at the bottom.
Yeah, Renita's right. I've only ever seen that in classical sheet music.
There you go, alto and tenor.
Yeah,
great,
alto. Yep,
nice,
tenor.
thank you. I wonder what the symbols are. The one, I recognize the one that I've seen other than these two. And then again, it's kind of like a more of a bracket, or symmetric top and bottom. I don't recall what the fourth one is, though. That'd be interesting for us to look at later.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll figure it out.
Eventually, now that things are clicking for me, I'd like to revisit all my music theory and really start to figure out what all the little squiggles and
Yeah.
symbols are.
Not only that, but if you look at music that you already know how to play and kind of analyze the chords from here as well, that's another place this is good. Like if you know that the beginning chord of a song is, this chord right here, that's a C minor, but that's a whole lot of, I mean, it looks ugly because we're technically saying we're in A major. That's
Well,
why.
we're in A major.
If I changed that though and said that we're in C minor, because I think that's the actual key that's in.
And that's a big key to not getting confused with ridiculous, is to properly set your key. Yeah. Otherwise, it will look like gibberish.
So the left hand is just doing an octave, the middle C, and the octave below middle C. The right hand is doing G, C, E flat, and G. And that E is already showing that it's flatted because that's in that key. And that's that first chord to the Chopin prelude in C minor. And that's one of those that when I start playing it, it's like sometimes I start to remember it, but sometimes I don't. But then other times I can get, through 3/4 of the song and I'm like, wow, like I actually remembered those parts. And then sometimes I'll go back to it and it's like, oh, nope, not today.
That's a nice chord.
Nice fat chord. The double C's at the bottom, reinforcing that sound. Yeah. And that's why basically the hand position on the right side there, the good thing about that is it's basically, if you leave the lowest note out, you're just doing that triad, right? The C, the E flat, and the G. And then we're adding the G on the bottom. So we're using the 5, that's the root, the 3rd, and the 5th. We're adding the 5th on the bottom as well. And that gives you, especially if you hit it with a roll, you could hear each note as it's hitting and kind of adding to the sound.
Yeah, it rings.
Some of those chords turn into a big handful too, where they're doing 3 or 4 notes in both hands, or in each hand, I should say, and making just a really big fat sound. But that's one thing about the piano, is that you can get really low notes and really high notes involved in the same chord, or you can crunch it all together and have 10 fingers all kind of close by to each other if you want, if that's the sound you're going for. But you have a lot of options with that, where with the guitar you can play stuff that's very low and stuff that's very high, but not as easily at the same time, because there's the stretch of the strings, so you can go from the lowest string to the highest string, but that's about 2 octaves, so you can stretch about that far. But on the keyboard, it's 1 octave, 2 octaves, you got three more octaves over here, so you can get a whole big stretch and get a lot more of the sound spectrum covered when doing a piano.
Yeah, and that's so true, Renita. Chords that use octaves like that are always nice and full. My left hand, I tend to always do octaves just to fill out the chord.
Now, one other thing is, in this case, we were doing the full chord plus, essentially, in the right hand and just the octave in the left. We were doubling up that 5 over here and doubling up the octave there. With some things, you would want to make it more sparse. So like a lot of times what they would play, if they wanted to play a C minor, they might do the root and the 5 in the left hand, just doing that C and the G. And then in the right hand, do the B flat and the E flat if we're playing a C minor. And that's giving you a C minor 7. But you can even reverse those if you want and put the 7 on top. With those, it sounds very open. And as you can see, you're stretched out across the keyboard a little bit more.
And it does feel more sparse.
So there's more room for people to kind of, whether they're playing lower or higher, you can make room for people by spreading the chord out that way. And that's without duplicating any tones. So we only had 1 root, 1 fifth, 1 third, and 1 7. But by keeping the 3 and the 7 in the right hand, and the root and the 5 in the left hand, especially with the root on the bottom in the left hand, that keeps us anchored in the key, and the root and 5 down there keeps that chord sounding nice down there. And then the top half, being the 3 and the 7, is just a nice comfortable place to be able to, you can play around that note and add other things in all around there and do harmony stuff or melody stuff on the right, but you're keeping that. And in the left, you can just bounce that, or even bounce to the 5 below it, more of a country bounce, going down to there. But those are just a couple of easier ways to make that work.
sounding chord.
That's all just minor pentatonic from C minor.
Yeah, it does have a little blues to it. Agreed.
Yep. And that's what I like about the minor chords, especially with that the 3 and the 7 there. You can do the same thing with the major 7, although you don't always use that 7 with the major 7, but if you did, you'd be looking at the E and the B instead.
Well, would you say blues is more minor dominant, more minor chords than?
I definitely say so because I mean, for me, I mean, there are major blues and minor blues for certain. The major blues you would be able to identify usually as a happier sound. If somebody can pull off a sad sounding major blues or a happy sounding minor blues, it's impressive. Those some of the things that I asked my cousin Jeff to do, because like those are the kinds of things where most people would say, you know, the minor is much more sad, the major is much more happy. But if you can reverse the feeling using that
depending
structure,
how you attack it, like
right?
you know, you
Which
attack a
notes you
minor
land
chord
on.
a certain way, you can pull the sadness out of it and make it sound poppy and bright.
Yeah.
Even though it is a minor chord.
Now, that one example, it would be to take the C major, like if we switch this back so that we don't confuse people with all the flats there. But we take C major and A minor, two of the same notes, right? The C and the C and the E with the G on top, or the C and the E with the A on the bottom. So two of those notes are the same, but C major sounds happier, A minor sounds more sad. So you could use a major chord and add a 6 in there, but that sounds kind of congested. That's using all of those notes. And if you leave the A on the bottom and you just play A, C, E, and G, you're stacking those thirds. And which one is it? Is it A minor with a G, or is that C major with an A?
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of both. Now, they call it an A minor 7, which is true. Because that's got the A on the bottom.
There's an A minor hiding in that C.
Exactly. Or in this case, there's a C hiding in that A minor 7.
You got peanut butter in my chocolate.
You got chocolate on my peanut butter. And it's just a question of which note you emphasize or land on. This makes it what it feels like. So if you were to play those notes all the time and constantly land on and reinforce that A, you're making it sound like it's the A minor 7. But if you're doing all this stuff and kind of landing on the C.
If you're accenting that A.
Yep. And the left hand beat is perfect. They're going back and forth between that C and the A to keep it ambiguous.
A glues it all together there.
And if you did that C with the major 7, you get that B in there.
Major 7 is the regular.
Major 7, but the B, not the B flat. Yeah, there you go. It's got that sweeter sound.
Oh yeah, if you go from this 7. Yeah, the 7 goes nice to the A.
Yeah. And there's certain spots where it's more useful than others. Some places it actually sounds like it clashes. Like if it was the 5 chord, you'd want to be using the dominant instead, where you're using it's a major 3rd but a minor 7, and that's where you're getting that. That's the dominant one.
Brings up a good point on the dissonance with minor chords and where they get some of that sad feeling from. It is the dissonant sounds.
Exactly. Not only that, but if you look at the modes, it's not just major versus minor, because that's, major's happier, minor is more sad. But what about the other 5 modes? Those are all different in different places on that same spectrum of happy versus sad sounding. So that in between major and minor, you end up with Dorian and mixed Lydian, let's say. And then happier than major, you end up with Lydian, where you end up with a sharp 4. So it's C major, but you make it an F sharp in there. That would be C Lydian. And it's got a little bit of a happier or different sound than major by itself.
And isn't that part of the whole purpose of like shifting modally like that, is to brighten a scale that might be a little dissonant,
Yep. To give the
or
ear something new to work on
make
that's
one
not part
kind
of
of
those.
dissonant that was our bright scale.
Mhm.
It kind of shifts the mood of whatever scale you're in
Mhm.
just by modal shift.
And in this case, it's basically moving one spot around the circle of fifths. We went from something that had no sharps to something that has one sharp. So we went from something being based as C major to something being based at G major, essentially, is what that ends up being, because the G major would have that F sharp only, and the C Lydian would have that F sharp in it only. So it's kind of like C Lydian is like G major, but you're playing it from the C to the C, from C to shining C. And then you could do the same thing the other way, where
That's what
you're
they
flattening more
meant.
things.
Hey, Lord Ace of Spades, good to
C
see
to
you.
the shining C. Good to see you. And then if we went minor, same idea, where you can go from minor, and then if you were to go, excuse me, more sad from minor, you would get down to the other modes from there as well, where you work your way back down. But right in between, you also get Dorian, where D Dorian, for example, would be if you were doing C major, but you do it from D to D, that's D Dorian.
Oh, Dorian D. That's how I can remember it.
Yeah, but only when you're in C major, Dorian is D. Yeah.
When I'm playing in C major notes.
But to me, that is the best. Yes, and Lydian does have that nice resolve, less dark. Exactly, that's the idea. Is that it's a little bit sweeter, even than the regular major scale with that sharp 4. But there's definitely a place for each of the modes. Mixolydian has a nice happy sound as well. To me, at least, like when I'm playing it on guitar, it's very similar to the position I would use for Ionian, or at least it helps me anchor that, because it's just another 3 notes to add underneath that, and you end up with the first 3 strings worth of guitars that are notes that you're playing would be like 1 3 5 1 3 5 1 3 5. So it's the same notes on 3 strings in a row. So it makes it a very comfortable spot to just kind of work your way up and down there and just figure out what feels comfortable to land on, because you've got every note in there. Since you've got 9 notes, that's every note that's in the scale with a couple of them doubled, and that
Now,
gives
would
you
you
the
say
ability.
different instrument sounds lend themselves better or worse to these modal
Absolutely.
shifts?
For example, things like
Because I think with
horns.
guitar, like that's their jam.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, if you listen, I mean, I'm a big Grateful Dead fan, and I always seem to find myself in Mixolydian when I'm playing along to their jams, because I just find myself in that spot, and just feels like certain riffs just feel like they belong there. As not that they're always playing in that position, but it feels like that is a favored position that they play in a lot. So like certain things like the multi pull off that you'll hear Jerry Garcia do, where you get this line where he's like pulls off like 6 notes in a row that all just kind of cascade down and just sounds so beautiful together. And it's one of those. I see, I got a note stuck down there. Yeah, there we go.
And with the sound of the guitar doing that has a different effect than, like, say, trying to do it with the piano. Not just the sound itself, but the way you attack.
The way that you attack. And in this case, he's kind of pulling off or even sliding all the way down, where it's just a brrr of notes that would be really difficult to do on the piano, because you'd be trying to go back and forth. Chromatic run like that, just it can't sound as smooth. Where you can do, you can do that kind of thing where you're sweeping the keys.
Guitarists can slide and pinch in ways that that you really can't do with a keyboard.
Yeah, and plus it
Unless
also sounds
you get
weird.
all crazy with the mod wheel.
If you take a grand piano,
yeah,
and you bend it, it's like that doesn't sound right. There's no bending on piano. But if you have something else in there, you're playing a synth sound, or you're playing something else, or especially if you're playing something like horns, that's something that does make sense, or even ooze. Ooze would work.
or something like is it trombone that slides, right? That has the slider.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, that's made for
this is trombone right here. Yeah.
See, that could be whales talking to each other if you go down an octave.
And that's just a little bit too high, I guess, because that really doesn't sound much like a trombone.
Well, those are the dolphins. Oh, it works nice with the trumpet. That's trumpet.
That's trombone still. I came down lower. and that's just messing around with
Casio's
the.
got good samples for that trombone.
They do, and that bend is actually, it's not a wheel or it's actually a button where where you can't really control how fast you're bending it or how far you're bending it. It's just an automatic at this point, a two half step bend. So from a C to a D, or from a C down to a B flat.
I'd like to really try those MIDI rings we looked at last year
Yeah,
for that kind of technique. Yeah,
and that would be awesome.
sliding your hand up and down,
Mhm.
I think would be the most natural way for me.
And this would be trumpet.
Now, when a trumpet player does that and they get that kind of bend, are they changing their breathing or what are they doing to bend on a trumpet?
For me, for bending on a trumpet, I'm not entirely sure. I think with a trumpet, it's more
They
about
use a
slurring
reed,
notes
right?
together. It's
It-
more
it's-
slurring notes together. It's only 3 valves, so there's only so many options, but it's 3 valves and the amount of
Oh
the
no,
force with which you push the air.
trumpets
And
don't use reeds, right? It's a brass.
not reeds, yeah, it's a brass.
just
It's
blow.
like a smaller tuba, like the big round mouthpiece. I played trumpet for a year back in 4th grade, but it was the only 3 valves. But if you think about it in binary, the valve is either down or it's up. So you've got 3 options. You got them all up. You got the first one down, just the second one down, just the third one down, just the first 2 down, just the second 2 down, all 3 of them down. And like those are the only options you got. So every note that you're going to play is one of those combinations of fingers. And a lot of what you'll hear with when you hear it sounds like a trumpet's going off and just making like total solo stuff. That's a lot of going back and forth between notes where they're running the fingers through this one, this one, this one, this one, this one really
that
fast.
They do, like what do they call it? The spit, or like muted. They
muting they'll do a lot of times with the hand.
They put that on the front of it, right?
On the front of it, wah, 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 wah. It's not the same thing you can do with
that
harmonica.
that whole spits kind of effect. That's all just lip and breath.
It needs to be just lip, yeah, because it's all lip and I guess they call it the armature or the way that you're actually puckering or pursing your lips on the mouthpiece and the amount of force that you're pushing with. If you're going as little air as you can and just as relaxed as you can, then you're getting the lowest note you can. So when you get down to the lowest valve, you'll feel the lowest note.
Splashy attack.
If you try to go lower than that, it just sounds like you're blowing air through it. It doesn't actually make the sound that you're looking for. So you start from there and you go through all the notes going up. And then when you get to the octave, that'll just be that same position that your fingers were in for that lowest note. But now you're just pushing a little harder with your lips a little bit tighter when you're pushing. Lip control, yeah, exactly. Holding the lips a little bit tighter to push a little bit harder. And then same thing, to get the super, super high notes, all it is more air, tighter lip and more air pressure. So that's why like some Dizzy Gillespie with the big puffed out cheeks, like that's not the way you should play. But that's how that happens, is just by pushing so much pressure incorrectly, I guess, at that point.
He must make himself dizzy, actually.
He literally looked like a balloon head when he would blow up. I mean, seriously, his cheeks would get enormous from blowing up like that.
By the name.
So they're saying a mix of, Renita's saying a mix of lip pressure and valve control. There you go. Thank you. And that was one that, again, when I played for 1 year in 4th grade, we didn't get into advanced techniques yet. It was more just, learning a couple of notes.
They do have like some valve adjustment they can do.
Well, it's all the valves that you're hitting. I guess some of them don't have to be all the way down all the time, so that's probably part of it. Like if the note you were going for was just the middle one down, and you put it all the way down or not all the way down, like that probably makes some difference. But if you looked at the actual what happens with the valves, like as you're pushing them down, it'll like open up a chamber that goes this way for that to connect those pipes together, or it goes up a little further, it connects this way to these pipes as it goes up through. So depending on whether you have it down or not depends on which way the air is getting through that valve. But they feel really cool the way the valves actually go up and down. It's like they have a smooth travel up and down, and they pop right back up where they're supposed to. So it feels kind of cool to like run a fast line, like if you just did that with the valves, it would feel kind of cool.
And Renita, even if you are a vocalist, understanding how these instruments work, especially the ones where this blow technique lends itself to vocalists understanding their own techniques.
Absolutely. Now with the trombone, there's literally no valves at all. So the trombone, you're dealing with every change in note is all about that air pressure and about how the slide has 7 different positions or 8 different positions that you're holding it in. And then it would be like, here's the root, and it's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whether it's forward and then back, or whether it's back and then forward. And I always thought it would have been, you're just going longer, longer, longer to get the higher notes or the lower notes, but it's not. It's kind of a back and forth, which reminded me kind of the way circle of fifths go around on a guitar, where you're going, a chord shape here, and then you go down a string, and then a chord shape, 2 frets back, and then down a string, and you kind of bouncing in that same. It's a geometric progression.
With a trombone, where they're hitting their pitches is all part of where they're sliding, right? So
Yep.
That's got to be like playing a fretless bass, where you just get to know where.
And again, it's the combination of the position and the lip pressure, because if you're going from here and you're coming to a slightly higher note, if it goes over that limit where now you're pushing harder, and it might jump an octave to the higher note because you're pushing harder at that point, that kind of thing. So it does look like it's quite complicated, but breath is the root of it, of like singing as well as the breath instruments, the winds, the brass and the winds and the woodwinds. And some you can't really tell, like with saxophone as compared to a trumpet or a trombone. I mean, trombone only has.
Are there any instruments where you control the pitch, other than say whistling, where you control the pitch as you're humming it out?
Like the kazoo?
All the winds and everything. It is all controlled by the instrument itself, right?
Fine orchestral kazoos.
Nobody's pushing.
Because if you're humming, if you're humming in a kazoo, that's where you're changing the pitch on your end.
I guess a kazoo counts. So you technically control the pitch.
Yep. Now, I guess the other thing would be kind of a modification,
would be
or kind of a
like
cheat.
Singing, if you think.
The breath controller, where like Peter Frampton, for example.
Oh yeah.
When I feel like I do, like that song, that kind of a sound, you can also use it as a breath controller for a guitar, where you have it in your mouth, and it's just you're changing the shape of your mouth will change the nature of the sound. It's kind of like having a wah, where you can just go wah wah wah, and with your mouth you're making that happen.
The breath controller, in that sense, it modulates the chord.
It depends. I think the one that I was looking at, one was for guitar, where he was using the mouthpiece and it was basically acting as a wah pedal, but he's able to control it not with how much you're breathing, but literally by having this air tube in his mouth. And then if his mouth is almost all the way closed, it sounds one way. But if he opens his mouth, like wah, it basically opens as if he's opening up a wah pedal, but it keeps his feet free, so he doesn't have to use his feet to do a wah. He can keep his, he can stay standing or sitting or whatever he's doing.
Typically you'd be doing that with like an expression pedal.
Right, and you'd be going wah 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 wah, and you'd be pulling it that way. But in this case, it's just you're able to just use your mouth to open and close up in front of the microphone, and it hears that and somehow modulates or acts as the controller for the wah, which is kind of cool.
I've always been surprised more guitarists didn't jump on that. Frampton is pretty much the king of it. He really.
I love that sound. It would be easy to overuse, though. I could see too. Like if you tried to do a whole album with that sound all over it would be a bit much. But
you spice up the right songs here and there. I mean, the Dead could have used it like every other song if they wanted to.
That's a good question. Harmonica, because of mouth shape and air pressure, somewhat.
Yeah.
Now the thing is that it is still like reeds, or it is still individual notes being played through each of the holes, like the 10 holes. You get a certain note when you push through, you get a certain note when you pull. And to get the bends on harmonica, usually you can overblow or you can underblow, where you're trying to pull too much air. You'd usually do that on the second and third lowest holes in the harmonica. And the way that I kind of made sense to me, or was working for me, I've only played a little bit of harmonica, but it's kind of like if you use the word chaw, like where you're bringing your chin down, you're trying to open up the mouth as you're pulling air in. Like, and it's like by pulling your mouth open very quickly, you're actually pulling too much air, and it makes the reed bend the note down. So instead of what note it should be, it actually bends it down a half or a whole step.
So like Uni was saying, it's all about vowels.
Vowels, right.
Sounds, yeah.
Wow, wow, wow.
Conch horn. Now you're talking. Ace.
There you go. Now that is also that's the lips, similar to a trumpet.
Nature's horn.
Similar to a trumpet, because your lips are what are doing the pursing together very tightly, and then blowing through that tiny hole in the back, and then the air just has all that room to expand from there and come out as a louder sound. But yeah, that's one where it is important to have the lips at a certain pressure. Have you ever taken a piece of grass, a blade of grass, and put it between your thumbs and blow?
Yeah, I used to do that as a kid.
Now, bending on a conch, I don't know about that. I'd be afraid to break it.
I could do it in post-production.
Small amplifier and speaker pushing the sound through a tube into your mouth, and the sound is picked up coming out the mic. That makes perfect sense. Yeah, exactly. And that's where the wah 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 will totally change the nature of the sound that you're hearing. There he is, Ron Burgundy. Had to find that somewhere, right?
Yeah, I bet you I could play that. That one looks like it ate his hand.
Well, he's playing it muted. See, it's an advanced technique. The oohs and the ahs. Always like the oohs and the ahs. Now, we also have some music this week that we're going to play for you, but we don't have to go right into it right now if we don't want, but we do have some.
Actually, I have a couple of them that people have sent me over the last couple weeks. I'm finally getting caught up with my messages, so if I didn't respond before, I'm almost caught up. I should be responding soon.
Excellent.
But I've got this one that Paul sent me, Paul Werda.
Right.
Great ambient folk player. I mean, he does a lot of different genres, but in this particular one, he went for the folk sound, and perfect timing because it's about the change of the season, the fall, which I am feeling.
Especially up by you, yeah.
Let me make sure I share it on there.
Especially up by you.
And this is a nice, relaxing track.
Last Thursday, it was almost a little chilly when it got down to 70 at night right on the river, but I have a feeling you're getting a lot colder than that.
I'm waiting for snow at this point.
Crazy.
So
Autumn.
This is the changing of the leaves. did I get a little whoosh in there?
Oh, a little bit. Not a big deal. It sounds beautiful though.
Well, what I really liked about this, I mean, he did, he used three-part arranging. Each
Mhm.
part was its own. The
Mhm.
middle had a smidge of "Welcome to the Machine" in there. Did you hear
Mhm.
it?
Yeah, yeah. And also, you can just even by looking at the wave, you can see the additional intensity in the middle section compared to the first and the third,
Yeah,
where it's that little bit higher wave, just a little, not nothing crazy, but just I really like that.
yeah.
I love instrumentals and the feeling that comes across with that, and the shifting in emotions the whole way through. I love it.
And the nice thing with folk like this is, your arrangement, you don't have to follow that traditional arrangement approach where you're like thinking verse, bridge, chorus kind of. Sometimes it's nice to just explore
Exactly.
your
That was the
chords.
word I was going to use. Explore,
Yeah,
explore the feeling, the chord
each
you're
one
in,
of
and then
these
another
parts
chord.
was an exploration around his theme.
Absolutely.
But very nice.
I like it a lot. Thank you, Paul.
That's some of the folk you can find on BandLab.
59 degrees in Pennsylvania. Wow. Sounds lovely. See, I'm always too warm, so 59 sounds just lovely. All the overtones of a major chord exist in the fundamental. Ah, there you go.
And
You
you
pointing
can
that out?
find him on BandLab at Paul Werda.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll put that in the
Now, was
chat.
that a solo project of his, or did he have other collaborators with him?
Yeah. Actually, I think was that one he was entering in a contest? No. It's just one. Oh yeah, he is. It's in the skirt contest
Oh,
this
nice.
month.
Mm-hmm.
Purely acoustical.
Nice. Now, Renita's talking about not liking snow. Now, I'm a skier and snowboarder, but I haven't gone in a decade. So, I mean, I do enjoy snow for that. But if I'm just stuck here looking out at it, it's not as much fun. But snow sports are definitely a lot of fun. They're
It's
fun to
hard
get
for
out there.
me to enjoy snow anymore. I get too much of it.
Too much of it, yeah. And that's the thing is, if you live somewhere where it's 10 months of the year you're getting snow, it's like it might be a bit much, but it makes summer that much more special, right? Those 2 months that you don't have snow.
And I love the concept of translating something like that into sound.
Mhm.
That's what I liked about that piece from Paul is it gave me that feeling of autumn, of leaves changing color.
And relaxed exploration, as right, hit the nail on the head with the exploration. Just hitting that first chord and just feeling it, and then feeling where it goes with that second chord, and then feeling how it just kind of works back and forth. I really like that.
Yeah, Paul's great with the atmosphere.
Mhm. Indeed. What I did find is that I'm in New Jersey, and here people pretty much understand how to drive in the snow. Not a big deal. There's some mountains around here too, so a lot of people have Jeeps and SUVs and all that. But as you move further south from this area, people like don't know what to do in the snow, because I would not want to be out in a car in, say, North Carolina when if they got like a foot of snow, because like they get 2 inches of snow and they'll shut down the state, because the one plow has to get to every road to get everything cleared out. It's just because they don't get snow often enough down there to be prepared for stuff
Try
like that.
being in Dallas when it snows. It happened to
Exactly.
me twice. I was there for 3 years, and twice it snowed across those 3 years, and the whole city shut down.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is if they're not used to it, they don't know what they're doing. It's like there were times I would be sitting there and there's an icy road and there's a hill and there's a light at the top of the hill. And then I can tell it's going to be right by the time I get up there. So I wait down here because I know I need a running start to get up the hill with the ice. And I watch people just pull past me and go like they're just going to go up there and sit at the light. And I'm like, okay, here it goes. This is going to be fun. And so, as soon as the light turns, you just hear, and you just see them start sliding back down and going sideways and everything because they have no idea what's going on. It's like, just got to like wait and, make sure they get out of the way, and then you can get around them. And it's like, okay, but you got to watch that because if they don't know what they're doing and they're trying still, that's a problem. If you don't know what you're doing, stay home because it's very dangerous.
Well, I stay off the road when it snows.
Mhm. Very dangerous, but it can be a lot of fun too. That's the thing is I used to, when I was 17, I just gotten my license. I just taken an advanced driving course and was going out, and I would go out purposely in like a big rear wheel drive, big old Buick from the 70s. So it had rear wheel drive, V8 engine, just solid, super solid car, and go to this one spot where there was a 90-degree curve that would then go up a hill. And it would just always get icy there. And if you just tap the gas a little bit, you just end up going sideways and up the hill. And it was just a cool little spot for that. Plus, you could see clearly that nobody's coming and all that kind of thing. So it was perfectly safe. but but it was always fun.
Were you a donuts guy?
Not as much. I mean, I would do the occasional donuts. What was fun was doing donuts in I think it was a Riviera, a front wheel drive car. So you had to do the donuts in reverse. So you're going backwards and doing donuts that way. And it was kind of cool to be like, got video. We had a video camera in the car for one of them where the scenery is just flying by as we're going around.
Yeah, my guitarist back then had a Mazda RX-7, little car, and he loved when it snowed. We'd go down to this dead end street, and he'd just go nuts.
Well, one of my buddies had a little Datsun. I think it was a Datsun, something that was a little small hatchback, right? And we would get like 6 people piled in there. And at one point, they had me in the hatchback, like in the trunk, as he's going around like these, snowy roads and doing turns like that, like whipping sideways, and I'm in the trunk going, what? It's like, I'm not the guy to have in the trunk for that. I'm a little too big for that.
I'm surprised they got you to fit in the trunk.
Yeah. Or to agree for that matter. But I did. We were going somewhere, and I guess, somebody else called shotgun, and I was probably last. It happens. But, we made it, and we're back. I'm gonna die. Exactly. That's the way it felt. But actually, if she was gonna die, she'd be wearing the red uniform.
She'd have
right?
the red
shirt.
She'd have a red shirt. She's safe.
Like, don't give me the red shirt.
They don't
no.
kill the orange shirts.
Yep. You'd see it in the credits. Red shirt number 2. You're like, no. I know it's a 1-episode gig. But that would be fun, though. I'd love to be on a Star Trek episode somewhere. Or any episode of like something sci-fi. That'd be cool. I think they could make me into a pretty scary alien.
I've seen you as an alien.
Yeah, you have. You've seen me as Megamind.
I've seen you as an avatar. I've seen you as an
Avatar.
Alien.
Yeah. As Antonio Banderas.
I've even seen you with a long wavy beard.
That's right. Yeah, that's one of my favorites actually. The way, and was it Snapcam? The way that some of those avatars respond, the way the hair flows and all that, in some of those with the beard, like the wizard beard, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I love special effects makeup too, Renita. When I was younger, back in the 80s, that was the career I wanted to go into, like horror
Nice.
special effects, back when it was still, prosthetics and molds and before computers took over.
Rubber masks.
Yeah, was one of my considerations as a career. Music just won.
Music wins. And that's good. Both are fun pursuits, though, for sure. And even just, understanding how they do certain things with special effects makeup is cool, too.
Well, and I wanted to learn other skills. Music was always the motivating creative outlet, but I learned photography, videography, everything else with the hopes that I could make videos for my music and, shoot pictures that would complement the music. Like what we were talking about last night with these AI pictures, utilizing them to set up a mood and then making music for that mood. Now, or vice versa, finding a picture that fits the musical mood.
Right. Now, Face Off on Sci-Fi, was that, I'm assuming that's one of the special effects ones for like science fiction makeup,
that was
right?
A great show. Yeah, see, for those who like that stuff, that show was your jam.
Nice. Yeah, me, I haven't watched really any shows in a long time, so I kind of got out of watching regular TV stuff. So when it was, mostly I'll watch maybe movies occasionally. So I do like sci-fi movies, so I'll catch special effects there. But other things than that, I'd be more like science shows and stuff like that, learning stuff about history and science.
Yeah, and these kind of shows, they help encourage those kinds of artists. It's like, hell, nowadays you even have Lego Masters as a show, just to show like those who go nuts with Legos. Oh, I'm a big sci-fi junkie too.
Oh yeah.
I wish sci-fi had not changed to SYFY, because after they did that, it seems like they lost track of what sci-fi was for a while. I don't know if they've come back, but
they abandoned their mission statement.
The old Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah, and I was doing some of the AI stuff that we were working on here, just as a. Let's see, I can bring some of that up actually. Looking through some of the random stuff I'm working on here. If I change this, you can even see it even as a small part of the screen. Just
Well, when you generate some of those pictures, do musical ideas come to your head? Because some of them have
Oh,
been
yeah.
coming to mind watching.
Oh yeah, absolutely. This is just a cheap way of sharing the screen here, but if I just look at some of these, I mean, these are ones that I generated. I made this one just a little while ago, but it's basically you just give it a prompt where you're telling it kind of the style that you're interested in doing, and you can tell it certain artists and have it merge different styles. And this could just be nature scene. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that feels
And
like
under the large tree in the middle, it's where our story begins. It was a beautiful day. It had been raining for weeks.
Oh,
The
I
sun
need some
finally
rain
came
sound
out.
then.
You can do all kinds of fun stuff, but that's where we were talking about doing storyboarding. You can do multiple types of scenes, different colors, different intensities. In this case, this is all from the same prompt, so it's just
Well, how
letting the
about
AI do its thing.
if you've got a song and
Mhm.
you've got a song title or words in that song that are the theme, and you see what the AI generates
Mhm.
off of a title.
Yep, and that's the whole thing is the prompts or the prompt crafting that we do to try to make these things happen. Like you could see one and be like, I really like the way the scene looks, but in this case, it was a prompt that somebody had written up, which was Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. And that's all they had to say. It wasn't like you don't have to get specific about I want this mountain here and a person here and this there. You just give a general overall idea of what describes the scene or describes the mood of the scene. And they give you numerous. Let's see how many did I get from that one? I think I did 7 of these. So, but I also did them in different aspect ratios. We talked about that
there,
too.
I want to hear some drums.
Yeah, for sure.
Tribal drums.
Tribal drums around the fire. And in this case, you see how it's a square, right? So these are the ones that I told to do this way. I actually did 3 different rounds where I told these to all be square. I told others to be tall, and I told others to be the long way. So you actually get a completely different feel depending on which aspect ratio we look at. But some of these, it's like lava's coming down, and there's some really intense imagery, which is pretty cool.
Oh, I like that one.
I like that one.
That would work with this.
And that's where
It does feel like getting ready for war.
yeah, and then the other ones with the other ratio, like if these are, yeah, it's a double wide.
Oh yeah, Renita, these things all look like album covers.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
think in the future, you're really gonna see this get used a lot that way, and also comic book covers.
Yep.
When you do put very specific prompts in there, you can create a Venom or a Punisher, or pretty much any character
Matter of fact,
in a couple of minutes.
I think we did that pretty recently. Some of these were,
Oh yeah, we were
Easter
making
eggs, psychedelic this, and
futuristic
realistic that.
music instruments.
Medusas.
Yeah, this is the
There we
the Wonder one. That's from what's the name of the
Stable
program?
diffusion.
Stable diffusion.
Yeah, stable diffusion. And this is you can actually see the
that's,
tab up.
That's Ghost Rider. That's
Ghost
a little
Rider
bit of
and
Venom.
Venom. Yep. Or they actually, the way we described it, I think, was Venom as Ghost Rider. So it's basically taking,
I
putting
feel
Venom
like that's
in the
Ghost
role.
Rider as Venom.
Exactly. And it could be either way, but it's whichever way I described it in the prompt is we get results like that. But I'm looking at it like, wow,
See,
Like,
and that is a comic book cover if I've ever seen one.
exactly. And it's, you know, it's close enough to one or the other, but it's not
Oh,
completely one or the other.
little bit of Green Goblin, a little bit of Venom,
And that was the other one.
a little bit of
That's what's
Ghost
coming
Rider.
next, actually, because these, I think I did, you know, 14 of these. And the thing is, these generate in a minute and a half about each. So I could say, give me 7 of these, and 10 minutes later, I have 7 brand new ones that it generates. And these are all generated by AI from scratch, just based on the description that I gave it. And in this case, it was very basic description, but sometimes you're feeding it, whether it's a style or a lighting choice, or again, some of these prompts. There's a couple sites that I can show you that that just show you or help you with how to prompt these things.
Yeah, the nice thing is it's rendering in the cloud, so you don't need heavy duty hardware. You can even render these from a mobile device. Jason's been going nuts
Yep.
off his phone.
In this case, they're rendering and they're dropping directly in. There's the prompt right here. Venom as Ghost Rider versus, I was going for Venom as Ghost Rider versus Predator. So I was trying to get like all of that in there. But then the rest of the prompt is just telling it, you know, certain things about the way to do it.
Oh man, Venom would hand the Predators their asses.
Yeah, but I just wanted to see it. You know what I mean?
Oh, I want to see it as a movie now.
Oh, and then here we go, Green Goblin. So this would be Venom as Green Goblin. So getting like some cool green eyes. In this case, like you can see how the AI sometimes messes up, where you know the face is obviously facing this way, but then this is almost another eye over here. So it thought he was looking that way. So sometimes you get some weird anatomy things going on, but that's also where doing, you know, a comic book character like this is much easier than trying to do a photorealistic shot of a person, because a lot of times they'll mess up 6 fingers or thumb bends the wrong way, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it only takes a little bit of Photoshop skills to clean up a little bit here or there. You want to get rid of that third eye? I can do it in about 30 seconds.
And as a matter of fact, even without using Photoshop, they've actually added an ability of using the AI to do it, because the AI itself, it's actually running from here. This is what it looks like, the Google Collab. And actually trying to think the name of the YouTube video was something about Stable Diffusion finally for free. If you were to go search for that video on YouTube, that would bring you to where you can get the link to this. There's a free collab that allows you to do these you know, completely free. I went ahead and I paid for a monthly one for this, for the lowest end membership one, but it allows you to just sit here and generate art all day.
Well, what you're paying for there is basically the Google what do they call that? The collab service?
Mm-hmm. Yep, the collab service, yeah. And this is that same prompt that we were just looking at there. So it's, you know, whether it's a digital painting, in this case, it was a digital painting of a lush natural scene. But the other thing is you can leave it completely open.
I like that approach, how they're using that with Google for cloud rendering this way. It allows you to tap into, you know, cloud services like that for any type of code that you can bring in. I mean, this stuff is coming from GitHub.
Yep.
And being processed through your Google Collab service.
And in this case, this is the in-paint part. So like, let's say, for example, like we were saying, if the hands were messed up or something about the face was messed up, you can basically go in here and using a tool where it's essentially like paint, where if I go scroll up in the collab, I think it'll show, yeah, like paint like this. You could go in and say, you know what, I don't want the house there. And you can just draw over that part of the house and say, replace that with whatever. And it'll redraw that area. Or I could say, put a rubber ducky right there, and it'll draw. It's
nice that it doesn't require like complex art skills. You
right.
don't have to be, you know, the greatest artist in the world to establish space like that.
And then it generates images like these.
Scribble.
Mm-hmm. And in this case, I told it very little. I just, you know, said basically beautiful nature scene on another planet and multicolored scenery and what have you. And just ended up with, you know, you get ones like this. So these are the ones where I could just run 10 of these off. When you start to
experiment with the color descriptions, I really like how it experiments itself with the different color combinations. The rainbow ones all look gorgeous.
Yeah. And at one point I did tropical waterfalls was another one where I was like, I just wanted to try to think of what would be a really good visual.
I'm surprised you haven't gone through a bunch of neon experiments.
Oh, I did. Psychedelic ones. Oh yeah. There was ones, let's see. We've got all these Spawn ones. These were Venom as Iron Man, which is also kind of a neat combination to look at. Where you got kind of Iron Man suit elements, but you also clearly have the Venom elements. So that would be a
And
vicious combination.
they don't have to worry about his hands.
Exactly.
His hands can look like anything.
And then there were some that, I don't know if it was demons or just some kind of
Hey, Johnny.
hey, what's up, Johnny?
Oh, dude, they're good with the demons.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, whether it's, and these are a lot of times, sorry, the site I was using is this lexica.art, where this is just I love their layout where it's just a full page of all this, whatever you're looking for. In this case, that was all psychedelic
Yeah,
backgrounds that I was
this is
looking
a
at.
great place to really see what this AI can do. Just
And if I just clear it and
all
do a
across
fresh
the
search,
board.
it just goes with random what anybody has been creating. And if you like the look of any of them, if you click on it, this is the exact prompt they used to generate it.
That's an album cover.
And this is the exact seed that they used. So I could get this exact response or result, but these results are all from that same prompt. So this is kind of a range of things. And if I wanted any of that, one thing you can see is the size is 512 by 1024. So this is double tall, like I was saying. So definitely you could change the ratio to make that. But if you were to use the same prompt and just say 512 by 512, make it a square, then it would be more appropriately album cover shaped, right? Like if you had it as a square, it would literally be just like it should be for an album cover. So if I copy this prompt,
I would use that strip in the middle, and then I'd use the dead space on the square to put the band name.
okay. So like if I were to take, all I would do is take that prompt that we just looked at there and bring it up here and drop it in here.
And there's another thing to search for. If you've got a band name, pop it in that prompt.
One thing is it doesn't do well with
interprets.
See what it interprets as, absolutely, but it won't do well with trying to do text. So that's one thing is if it puts text words up there, it won't make English or good words, but absolutely for the prompting to see what it comes up with, because that is getting the AI's interpretation or learning from the data set. What did it learn from the name of your band, essentially?
Yeah, I would put the words, I would put the letters in on top of the picture, again, with Photoshop.
Right.
That's
where a combination
you get
is
an
good.
image that looks like your band name or like the band concept, and then you put the text right over the image.
And you can also make multiple images at a time if you want. With the number of iterations, you can go up to 100 of them at a time. In this case, I think I was set to just one, or 3, or what have you. But I could say make a few of them and then just tell it to run. It tries to, since it's already loaded all of the data set, all the training data, it basically takes about 12 seconds for it to get started. And once it gets started, it'll have the first image done in about a minute and a half, based on what I just told it to create.
When you think about it, you've seen those lyric generator sites, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's a couple of sites out there that you can generate lyrics. That's been around now for a while. This is kind of a natural extension as these AIs get more and more creative and get fed more data.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what we'll be generating in the future?
Exactly.
I really see this going towards video and animation eventually.
And unfortunately, some people see it as something that'll drive people away from art, saying, oh, look, computers are taking over and we don't have to even do art anymore. But to me, this opens up so much more, where it's just, it kind of takes the mundane parts, the filling in of the boring parts of the image out of the equation, where you can just be the creative spark to get it started and then make your little tweaks wherever you want.
If anything, my feelings is it might deter some young aspiring artists who are just getting into the craft, who might start feeling like, I can't do it as good as the computer. But I think it's going to offset that with how much it encourages non-artists to start thinking like artists. Again, I would want to touch these up.
Absolutely.
I wouldn't be just happy enough with the end result that I wouldn't feel compelled to put some of my own art on top of it.
Yep. But in this case, even before we get into doing the art ourselves, we could say, like, let's say, for example, with this image, let's say we like the central part, but we don't like that green mushroom on the right. I could just take that little Photoshop looking tool over there, draw over that mushroom on the right, and just, tell it to inpaint or redraw that. And the AI will basically reinterpret that area for me. And I can just say, like, remove that from the background, and it'll paint in the background behind it.
And that makes you part of the art. That gives you some artistic skills.
Yep.
In order to shape it the way that you want.
Yeah. And in this case, it's a lot of the lighting
Tell
the
me
lighting
that
is.
this wouldn't be a modern day Dr. Seuss. Like,
Absolutely. And again, you can zoom way in and see like the detail that's on it. And this is, if I wanted to make this larger, these are all at this point 1024 by 1024 is the size of the image, because I rendered them at 512 by 512, and then the upscaler doubles it. But the upscaler can go ×2, ×4, or ×8. So this could be 4096 by 4096 is like the largest
oh,
that you can
and
tell
that
the
would be
upscaler
plenty.
to do.
If you get it at 4096 and I want to zoom in this much, say for a video,
Yep.
I mean, even here, the resolution's decent enough that a 720 1080 video looks good. But if you
Exactly.
get it at 4096, I can zoom into that window.
Yep. You're like, who's hanging out up here on the balcony? And again, these are all just, each one of these that we've looked at with the mushroom like tree houses, these are all from one prompt, where as I was looking through that other site, the Lexica site, I basically saw something that caught my eye and I said, that one. And just basically.
And that's the
went ahead
other
with it.
thing with that Lexica site and being able to see the prompts that got those images, again, kind of helps you to artistically think of your own prompts.
And again, right here,
I guess is the new way to paint.
this one where it says explore this style, this blue button. If you hit that, it basically takes this image and keys that up top, and it gives you an entire new search just based on things that are similar to the one that we just looked at and what prompts generated those. So these are all different prompts that I could now use that all have that same style to them or a similar style to them. And whether it's different artists, like you could just even click on any and see what they actually have in here, whether it's particular artists or styles.
I'm curious as to what is the phrase that gives it such complexity. When you see these pictures where there's so many patterns and things going on, even inside the patterns.
Right here is there's highly detailed is one of them, and intricate is the other. And I've used insanely detailed as well. I see that in a lot of them, whether it's insanely or whether it's intricate. But intricate is important because that the internal complexity. You could use complex, but any of those kinds of phrases, and you can, the more you repeat the phrases in different ways, even you could say intricate, complex, highly detailed, insanely detailed. Like the more of those that you put in there, the more it's emphasizing. You can also add individual weight to any one of these things by just adding exclamation points. So I could take this and say that if I was really interested,
would change its priority on focus.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Like if I was really interested in smooth, if I wanted it to be smooth over everything else, I could just add a couple of exclamation points after smooth, and then it would say, okay, it would increase the priority of that in the prompt.
That's nice and easy.
Yep. You can also do it with brackets of a certain style, but I haven't looked into the bracket method, but that's one of those that you'll see. And that's the other reason to explore here is you're seeing how other people got these results, and you'll see in their prompts how they, what they might have selected. Like some of them are insanely long, but you can see also that just by mousing over different sections, it highlights, what type of one that it is by the color, or, this is all one thing together and this is all one thing together.
That is caught in the web.
And you get multiple results from that same one. Some are round, some are not symmetrical.
Yeah, Uni, this is, he's utilizing his Google Collab subscription to run the AI.
And these are the ones that we just generated.
And you can find the AI if you search for stable diffusion.
Stable diffusion, yeah. The YouTube that I saw that had the links to the collab was Stable Diffusion Finally for Free, I think was the actual title. And it brought us to, it's also NOP's Stable Diffusion Collab. But once you get to it, if you can do it for free. So the idea of connecting to your Google is partially because it drops them there.
Yeah, how did you connect their engine to your Google Collab? Did you have to copy code, or did you just point towards your Google Collab?
As soon as you open it up, one of the first steps that it does is it asks, it's actually up here. There's a checkbox if you want it to. You don't have to have it go to your Google Drive. But
so it's really as simple as just saying, I want to use the Google Collab as my engine.
Yeah. Well, the engine is the engine. It's more where you're going to put it.
Logging in with your Facebook account.
See right here where it has AI pics and it says use Drive for pics, and this is the checkbox. So if you just uncheck that, it's not going to go to your Google Drive. But by checking that box, that means that one of the first steps that happens for the collab is it tells you that that collab wasn't authored by Google, and do you want to run it anyway? So of course you say yes, and then it asks for the permission to look to your Google Drive, and then you're able to just drop it. The images just drop it directly into your Google Drive. And the other thing I use is delete originals is another checkbox. And that way, because it'll make the image, the small one,
You'll
and then it'll
fill up
upsize
that
the
Google
face.
Drive fast.
Then it'll upscale the face, and then it'll upscale the doubling the size. And so I would end up with 3 images for each of the images that I'm trying to generate. But by telling it to delete originals, this other checkbox up here, once you click or select the delete originals, then it'll get rid of those files and only leave the final product there. Plus there's this sharpen option where you can have it come back through and sharpen everything with a pass or two to make them really pop out, because that'll get all details, put little shiny, like blades of grass will get shiny edges on them and things.
Yeah, it's nice that they give that natively. Again, Photoshop, I could run any of these through a couple of filters in Photoshop and upscale them much more. When it comes to sharpening, it's just like EQing or, with audio and things like that. Sharpening is a combination of a little bit of sharpening, a little contrast adjustment, a little more sharpening, a little more contrast adjustment. If you do it right,
I really like
you
that one.
can upscale and keep it clean.
That one came out real nice. And like I said, it takes about 1.5 minutes for each. In these cases, because these are doubly tall, they'll probably take a little bit longer, so more like 2 minutes
Plus,
each.
the good thing with the way this does its upscale sharpening, it does a combination of different types of sharpening.
Right.
There's unsharpening, there's sharpening. There's actually like 8 or 9 different ways to sharpen an image. And if you get familiar with them, you can do this yourself, but it's nice when they give you that option and they just kind of do the magic for you.
And actually, this area here for the post-processing, this is where we're choosing 2 different upscalers. In this case, I'm using CodeFormer and the ESR G-Scan. ESR again, are the 2 different ones, and it basically one just for the face, and the other one does the rest of the scene.
NVIDIA Tesla the common card that it's rendering from? Because I've noticed that
it's the high-end one.
Tesla.
It's always a Tesla because of the fact that I pay for the collab. If it was the free collab, you would get to the Tesla sometimes. Otherwise, it would just give you the best that it could other than that. But it tells you right here which one you're connecting to or what specifically you're getting.
Yeah,
So
the nice thing is you don't have to go buy one.
Yeah. And this is, again, it's just connected. It shows you the amount of RAM and the amount of disk that's being used up in the corner there for the connection to the collab. And also, it doesn't want to be running in the background. Like, they don't want you to just have stuff cranking off in the background all day. So it says, it'll pop up a window every now and then. Are you still there? To make sure that you're actively watching while it's generating. But other than that, it only doesn't really cut you off unless you miss those prompts where it asks if you're still there.
I really feel like this could generate, Magic the Gathering cards, tarot
Absolutely.
cards.
Absolutely. Tarot cards is one of the prompts I was giving.
You're going to see future card decks being made out of this stuff.
Some of these that we looked at also, we were talking about this heart-shaped thing, and this was where somewhere in the prompt it was talking about like the cybernetic heart in the middle of a tree god, something like whatever was described, and then it attempts to make it happen. And if you look at the different ways that it kind of imagined a heart, like in some cases it's multi, something in there like that where it's multi pieces of a heart. Other times it's kind of just a heart shape. This one is like encased in glass, which I really like the layout on this one. In fact, it's like encased in glass with the like electricity coming around it.
Yeah, and little heartlings around it.
That one is more just like the overall shape. Gets you that heart stuff.
Yeah, that's a nice garden.
Good to see you, Uni. We'll catch you again next time.
Have a good night, Unit.
This one more like got all the cabling. Yep.
Underwater.
The damage on the right there. All that missing area.
That's what happens to hearts sometimes.
Yeah. But I just like to see the different ways that it imagines the same prompt. And again, this is the style questions about what style the artwork is. It's usually from these prompts just a combination of multiple artists that you end up combining into one. Portals was another good one to look at, where you get like magic portal in the woods or whatever, and you end up with stuff like this, where it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Like good lighting at the top and good framing, and like you could easily use that as the basis of a scene or a story.
Turn that into a scene, yeah.
Or an album cover again. That's and at one point I used that. I just told it, epic scene for an album cover, and I tried to tell no text so that it wouldn't try to put an album cover label or title on it, and just I ended up with just hundreds of them. So I mean, I've got depends on what you want, like whether it's some of these are more of a nature style where it's more about, this was like more also Dr. Seussy in the style of the trees or in the dripping, vegetation coming off of everything.
Oh, I feel a lot of Dr. Seuss in some of these.
And then you can go like even, neon colors, like this was like neon butterfly something. You end up with, bright green colors and butterflies and stuff. And again, just by getting a small sample here, now I have the prompt locked in. So if I
That
see
goes
if I
back
really
to what
like
I
that,
was saying about a band,
Mhm.
Iron Butterfly.
Oh yeah,
If I
yeah.
was Iron Butterfly, I'd love to see what that does.
Then we got one big old bug in honor of Tony having such big bugs up there.
Yeah.
One big one the size of the moon coming at him.
The ones I have here will tear that bug apart.
But look at the fuzziness of these bushes down here, like this, because this is like it's a digital painting, so it's not meant to be photorealistic, but just the style of it, to me, it's you could have it emulate certain artists' brush strokes and things like that.
Well, it feels like the Avatar world.
Yeah, and I remember you liked the yellow brick road one that we did over there. Like there's a path through the woods at night with the lanterns. You get that spooky feel going on. Sometimes it's scenes like that. High symmetry is another prompt that you'll see a lot if they want to keep it very symmetrical down the middle.
Tarot card.
Yeah, exactly. The only reason, and then here's where we got, that's what I was looking for, psychedelics. But we had the dragons going at each other, just like purple dragons in a magical forest. Sometimes they imagine them as people that have dragon stuff.
Have a good night, Renita.
Take care, Renita.
Great to meet you.
Good to see you. But there's the vivid,
cool. That's like a little kid dragon.
yeah, and the vivid nature of the colors in some of these is just like the high contrast, or whether it's just comes out really solid. And again, sometimes the anatomy's all wrong, so like legs in the wrong place or too many fingers and stuff like that. But that's stuff that can A, be fixed in Photoshop, or B, be fixed with the in painting thing that's already here.
Well,
really
until
like
you show me a dragon, I'm not gonna know whether the anatomy's correct.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that one.
The blue mushrooms, yeah, that was a good prompt. So this is another one where I could run 100 of these and they would come up all different, in that same style, trying to follow the same idea of the prompt. But you could just take the same prompt and change the artists that are listed, or the style that they have there. So it really allows a lot of flexibility, and just anything that you can think of, you can make. So if you can describe it, and again, even if you can't describe it, you can just go to that a site like this and just find something that you like, and say if that's what you wanted, you just say, oh yeah, I really like that image, so I just copy the prompt and then bring it over here and then
Da
copy it.
Vinci style. It really did capture his symmetrical approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And down here at the bottom, realistic, ultra detailed, technical precision, forbidden knowledge, classified, eldritch symbolism. I mean, they have, sometimes the stuff, some of that might not affect the image at all, but other parts of it might, but you can just copy the whole prompt, run it, and then see if because your results should be, similar to these. And then you could, if you really like what you see, then you can try a different one, change it up slightly. But again, you just get pages and pages because there's so many people doing so much art, and so many of them, like if I really like that one, for example, that's almost nothing in the prompt, right? Ancient machine for killing God. And it gives 2 artists.
Bet our hard drives are going to fill up.
Absolutely.
And
that's where
playing with this stuff, cloud drives are only going to get more and more full.
Absolutely. But full with good stuff, though, is the thing. I mean, these I could make artwork like this all day, and that's what I have been doing a lot of lately. Is and again, the less you tell it, a lot of times the better, because then it's more free to create on its own, to decide what it's going to make for the image. You just kind of, like, I could say epic scene, epic nature scene from above, and it has a pretty wide variety of stuff that it could do, and I could just give it different artists as far as the style to have it follow, to make things that look a different way, whether it's pastel colors or whether it's super realistic or whether it's very abstract. A lot of it in the faces too, they've gotten a lot better recently, where at the beginning, as I said, every face was very mangled, where now whether you tell it high symmetry,
you can recognize a lot of these actors and actresses.
and it's just because of the image upscaling, where it has a detection algorithm where it can detect a face, and then it knows to wipe out the eyes and the mouth and redraw them using the other image upscaler. But like if you tell it to put a famous person in a different role, somebody who wasn't there before, Adam Sandler as Iron Man or whatever, you can, and it'll really look like that because they'll take that face. They know what that face looks like if it's somebody famous, and they can put him in a different role or in a different situation that you describe. But I could just page through these all day, and then you'll find just like one will jump out at, and you'll be like, whoa, and then say, okay, explore this style, and all of a sudden you get a whole page of ones that are in that style, and you're like, okay, and now we're talking. And you just like find something that jumps out at you, and you can have it and make more. I happen to be a fan of colorful ones and colorful aliens and such. Definitely some cool stuff there.
It takes psychedelics to a whole new level.
Yep. And again, the fact that they draw so quickly, I think I told it to draw 7 of these guys at the taller size. So these are like,
love that one with the towers.
Tower coming as he's wearing as a hat. Nice.
Well, and how many are 1, 2, 3? How many windows are in there?
6.
6.
Looks like 6 down to the face.
Save that picture.
Oh yeah, save them all.
Well, that just got me thinking. Here's a good lead in. One of the songs that one of the artists that I had loaded up, Minkley,
Nice.
she's done this concept album of the 7 Deadly Sins.
Oh, nice.
And it's incredible. That kind of picture is the kind of album cover that would work perfectly with.
Sorry for the scrolling, but there it is. So that would have been this one. Yeah. So skull at the bottom, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the little tower on top. So whether the skull counts as the 7th or whether the tower on top counts as the 7th. Not bad.
See if I can find one of her sins, just to give you an idea how crazy this is. I really.
These are the same thing with the intricacy and the high detail. Like these are coming out as very, very detailed patterns. Which is very cool.
What's my favorite sin? Oh, I'll do Lust.
Nice.
They're all good.
Mm.
But Lust definitely was interesting.
Very cool. Always a good one to check out. Would Lust be in D minor?
Some of these probably are. So this is an album she just finished, which you can actually find. She sent me the link for the album. I think it's here. And she put a lot of work into this. It's very experimental, very creative. And I think a lot of it she's doing in Swedish, which just makes the vocal sound incredible.
Nice.
But I'll put a link to the album in the chat, and this is the Lust track.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. That is very cool. Very industrial. Got it.
Yeah, that was one of the more wilder ones. And again, you know, the approach for arrangement, like the last track we were listening to,
Mhm.
non-traditional arrangement, but still, you know, so effective.
Yeah, definitely very cool.
Yeah, you'll find her at Minkley. You guys should check her out.
Yeah,
Put
definitely.
that in the chat here.
Mhm. Scrolling through some more of that stuff. That's one thing I'm gonna have the most issues with is organization of all of these images.
Well, you got to have a strategy
Yeah,
at some
exactly.
point on where you render to.
Yeah. Because at the beginning, I definitely didn't. I just started dumping them all in here. So I just, pages and pages and pages and kind of stream of consciousness of whatever. I went from whatever I found as the next link or whatever is what I would hit. But, like these are some of the psychedelic ones. So as far as coloring goes, like definitely getting lots of blues
But
and
yeah,
pinks
you do
and
have some
purples.
color themes going on there.
Mhm.
They look like Angie's logos.
Exactly, and that's the other thing is they have incorporated now. I haven't messed with it yet much, but init image where you can give it an initial image to start with, and then I could do again I could shrink the image down to the middle and tell it to paint around it. I can take a full image and erase parts of it and tell it to fill stuff in. So I can if we took for example Angie's logo, I could take that and make that small in the center of the screen and tell it to fill the screen around it and see what we get from there. So we're going to try that, do some experimenting. But again, that's part of it that I haven't really messed with yet, but it's definitely something that I'm going to mess with a lot because these are just very cool.
You know, I could see using those as overlays over these light visuals that
Oh, absolutely.
that I used.
Yep.
That's a nice frame that I could put behind them.
Yep. Absolutely. And we also had the other ones we talked about before, which were the piano bar ones. So that was also another one that we could use visuals like that, or concerts, or bar backgrounds, or anything. I mean, sky's the limit. We can just if you can think of it, if you can describe it, then we can get it in here, and then we can pick and choose and shop around through there for art styles. The other one, actually, the first one I was talking about was this one, where we're looking at different different prompts that we can do. And there's also a prompt crafting one, which is this, I believe.
Oh, I saw some scary clowns in there.
Oh yeah, sure did. Scary clowns, scary
Oh,
aliens.
and there's the dude from Aerosmith.
How about
Steven Tyler.
about that one? Different modifier, different options from that same one. Some freaky looking ones. Other that are some are more realistic, some are much more fanciful. Very colorful though. I like that. Quite vivid.
It goes to show you, a computer can have a wild imagination.
It sure can. Now with this one, Promptomania, one part is you can actually add the prompt parts that you want, and in this case, you can choose like if you want it to be a drawing, and in this case, it's taking a face, and then it's giving you examples. If you were to throw doodle or drawing or sketch or illustration into the prompts, like these are the ways it would modify your results. So it gives you a really good, really quick way of seeing how the different words can specifically affect your art style.
And again, you're learning about different art styles. Like,
Exactly.
this is what they call these drawing techniques.
Yep. And if it was pencil, there's a few here. Colored pencil, charcoal. And carving, etching, and modeling. See what it would look like if it was a carving of that. I mean, it's just pretty cool that you're able to see all these different options of how something would look or an idea would look in all these different methods or styles. String art.
How would it look in wood?
Yep, exactly.
Carved in wood.
Carved in wood. Is it a wood carving? Is it a relief carving? You've got a lot of different options of each of those. If you're making it into a sign. And as far as materials go, if it's made of liquids, you get some weird results with that. But plasma and energy, things like that. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways that you can modify things, and these give you ideas of how you can create better prompts to get better results from what you're working with.
Now, what are intangibles? Because I understand all the camera color, dimensionality, display, geometry, lighting. Understand all of those. What is it considered intangibles?
Where's that?
In that little strip in the middle there, camera, color, dimensionality,
Thank you.
display.
Yep. Emotions and qualities, concepts, symbols, and number systems.
Interesting.
Hexadecimal. Emotions and qualities. Happy accidents. They'll turn you into Bob Ross. Evil. Happy. Yeah, so these gives you ideas of what the face or what kinds of expressions you can get with whatever you started with. Because also the fact that we just started with beautiful face, but I could also start with adding something in here like a famous person, for example, or a specific scene. Like if I said Big Ben, how about that? Just throw Big Ben in there and see if that.
When it comes to facial expressions from the 3D world, when it comes to designing a face, phenoms, I, E, O, like how you make a face to say different sounds is a big thing in the 3D world when you're animating a face.
Right.
I'm surprised they don't have that as a category. The emotions are useful. Like the emotions help to get like scared face, happy face, but phenoms help to get you speaking face.
Right. And that's the question: is you can do you could use things like surprised or different things like that to get different facial looks, or saying a or in conversation or screaming something. Like you could use those types of things in your prompt to get it to do different things like that, I guess. But good numbers of concepts and things that you can do. You make it out of cloth or whatever. I mean, it depends on what you're trying to make, of course, whether it makes sense. Not all the materials make sense on everything, but there's post-processing also, whether it's shaders and filters or reflections.
Yeah, and again, that goes back to 3D too. A lot of these characteristics are part of the 3D designing world.
My favorite was down here, though, is mimic the style of one or more artists, because down here you're actually seeing, like if it was Assassin's Creed, that's what it would look like. Or if it was, and again, you can pick any of these, but you can get different styles if we're just starting
Andy
with a beautiful
Warhol,
face.
not surprised.
Yep. There's your Frazetta down there. But yeah, you get an idea of what different artists' styles would look like. And if you say, hey, what about combining this psychedelic one here with, this representative one over here and one that's ultra detailed up here, like you can combine 2 or more or 3 of these together. And if you were to add them in, it would add them like Lego blocks into your prompt up here. And then you could just at the bottom say copy the prompt and then copy it over to Stable Diffusion. And just with a few clicks, you're able to get things working out. Like if we were to do a landscape instead of a beautiful face and then come to the same area, now you're seeing all these in landscapes in the styles of all of those artists.
And this this helps you to learn how to speak to the AI.
Exactly.
And that's what I like about this. How to talk to the AI.
Yep. And whether it's combining multiple artist styles or whether it's just picking an artist style that you really like and going with that, definitely a few different ways of going with it. But
and it lets you add collection styles, huh?
Oh yeah.
So somebody could say, you don't have this artist. Here's an example.
Yep. Like maybe they don't have Salvador Dali. I mean, I'm sure they do, but if they didn't have him, you could just go down here and add that, and it would try to.
Eventually, this artist list is just going to become monstrous.
He's right there, Salvador. But by clicking Salvador Dali, then it actually adds it up here. So basically, my prompt is whatever I had as my image prompt was nothing, but I'm saying in the style of Salvador Dali, Big Ben. And if I just said that's all I want, then it would just leave it like that. And down here it would be, wow, you're ready. And then you can copy the prompt and bring it over to the Stable Diffusion. Copy it up in here. Now that happens to be a pretty simple prompt, so it wouldn't need to do all that just to get something like that. But in this case, it just shows the method involved. So by Salvador Dali, Big Ben. In this case, it's still drawing tall images because we had that as the style we were making recently. So we were doing these that are the ones that are taller, like the double height ones. These are all the psychedelic. This was like psychedelic concert was the prompt I used.
And all concerts I go to are psychedelic.
Exactly. And I just told it to run all night. So it was just, it ran for
hours. I wish they
looked
more like these though.
Yeah. I mean, the very vivid colors and the fact, again, that it's in a crowd and you're way in the back, for me also made it where it was, you're not worrying as much about faces. So it's not, the AI is not wasting any time trying to redraw faces. So it's able to focus more on the other details that we're interested in. Lots of psychedelic stuff. And I also did a bunch that were not as psychedelic, but like I said, piano bar or small bar concert stage and things like that, just trying to get different music. The other one was studios, music studios.
Yeah, piano is the one I want to play with.
Yeah, piano's got some nice
See what
ones.
it gives me. I feel like I should be playing something jazzy and shit I can't play, but
because of the
it would
lighting,
work good with these.
And that's the other thing. It could be oldies or, classical or what have you. Classical is always in style. I also did singers at one point where we put just singers in front of the microphone.
Oh, I forgot the second chord.
B flat.
Moonlight Sonata, the second chord. I used to know it. It was the first song I ever learned. It's just been 35 years since I played it. I know on the second part it goes up like that.
Right.
Favorite Beethoven piece.
Nice.
Actually, one of my favorite piano pieces of all time.
Yeah, it's a beautiful one. It is an excellent choice. They did some with zombie makeup.
I wonder if they would let me do a classical to metal for that pop to metal.
I think it depends what they would consider pop elements, but yeah, for sure.
Well, I could make it classically pop-ish or poppy classical.
These are some more of the psychedelic ones also, where it was a psychedelic face. So we definitely would start working with stuff like that too. But I do like letting the AI do its thing, just kind of giving it a relatively vague instruction or a style or an artist that I like, and then seeing what it wants to draw or what it sees in the field. All kinds of stuff. But I digress. I can go back to the other view where we have the meticulous, because that.
I can see a lot of musical inspiration from those things.
Absolutely.
I mean, you stare at them long enough, eventually you're going to start thinking in the moods.
Even like you were saying before, you see that the brimstone and fire, and you get that, you get a certain emotion over you, and that intent, that very much affects what you start playing, because you'll start feeling that emotion. You start playing in that way.
And they kind of nudge me towards certain keys, like
Yeah.
Looking at them makes me want to start with a certain chord, which eventually leads me to a certain progression.
Yep.
I'm trying to think of something I played with Joe last week that had this really cool. He had me playing in those like E flat. your scales. See, and it shows you flatten the shit out of that C major scale.
Yep,
Now
that was all
see
black
it.
notes, all the flat notes. Now it's just all black notes. That would be the difference between the major and the minor. That G or the F sharp, right? I like the minor sound better though.
You got to get one of those Japanese sounds, a koto.
Well, for that actually, what I like doing is, let's see, you put like if you're doing like the B, C, and the EF, those would normally not, you would normally not have two right next to each other there and two right next to each other that close. So it sounds exotic, even though those notes are all in C major scale.
And that's the kind of thing that you can, that's helpful, like if you want to build up tension right there with, with that, those four notes, depending on how you play them, can be like, you don't know what's hiding in those woods.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden, something's coming out of them. It's like the
That's really
Jaws. It's like the Jaws effect when you use those half steps like that, you know.
Very ominous. You could also do things like leaving too much of a gap, like normally even in the pentatonics, right? Everything is either a whole step away or a step and a half away, but nothing is further than that away. But if you were to make a modification where instead of like your A minor pentatonic, if you were to make more of a gap and go from the A to the C sharp, that sounds more exotic also, because those aren't the notes you would normally have in a pentatonic, because you're sharpening what in this case the minor, third is sharped, or that's the major third essentially is what that would turn out to be. And you normally wouldn't have those in that particular order.
Well, I think your F got stuck.
F, that one.
You had to kick it.
That does happen a lot, doesn't it? And it doesn't even seem to matter whether it's when I'm hitting multiple notes at a time.
Yeah. Fortunately, the patch you're using, the key actually the patch had died off, but the note was stuck. The stuck MIDI notes is
the patch is set to 0 is the thing. I have the MIDI, the meticulous itself, volume at 0, so that we're only using it for the visual. So when a note gets stuck, it probably was still trying to make noise the whole time, but it's at 0 volume, so it's not trying to. The volume, the sounds you're hearing are coming directly out of the keyboard itself. I have the quarter-inch cable that I usually use for the guitar plugged in directly as the output.
And stuck MIDI notes has been a real thing since the beginning of MIDI. That's why, like, every MIDI program has a MIDI kill switch. They have to, because once in a while you'll get a stuck MIDI.
And in this case, I usually notice it, and if I see it, it is definitely just a matter of hitting that note again, and it clears up immediately. So it unsticks very easily.
Yeah, it's not as common of a problem as it used to be. Back in the 80s and 90s, it was, any given recording session, if I was sequencing at some point during the night, it would happen.
Right.
But
For me,
DAWs got better, and by the end of the 90s, it became less of a problem.
it reminds me of those old typewriters that had the letters that would go clack, clack, clack.
Yeah,
They would come out individually.
The
And if you get too fast, they'd come out and they'd stick. Same kind of thing. All of a sudden, it's only because only at certain times, and only if you hit things too close together or too many things at a time. But I mean, you can do a whole lot of notes at a time, and it doesn't seem to mind. It kind of freaks out about what chord that is, but like, how many fingers do you have? Damn.
It's all about your polyphony.
Yeah,
A good keyboard is going to give you at least 8-note polyphony, but like this one's got 32-note polyphony. I could never actually play all those notes at the same time.
Those 10. 3 C majors. And another C. And a B of X.
Can't hold them all at the same time. I have no fingers left.
Not that you'd ever try to play that many at one time. Even just 2 triads is good.
That's as many fingers as I can get down.
Little triads.
That'd be one to bounce off a band.
Definitely. And for me, the kind of feel for that for me would be a root and then the 3/5.
Or just the left hand chord hits. You know, like what I was doing was just left is octaves and right is the chord. So gives me a chance to actually play some chords with my right hand.
Now, for me, also chords. A lot of times, a lot of people would play 1-3-5 because that's what you're supposed to do. But for me, that feels really cramped, congested, or small. So a lot of times, for me, I'll either just do 1-2-3 with the thumb, index, and middle for the 3, or I'll do even the middle 3, doing index, middle, and ring finger as my 3. It's all a matter of what's comfortable or what you need to leave available for what else you have to do melodically. If you feel like you need to have a couple fingers open at the top, then you can use those, the 1-2-3, and that way you've got the a couple fingers on the top that you can do stuff with.
Now, do you really find your middle finger when you're doing chords? My middle finger is almost never the one. Well, I guess with the inversion sometimes, but like a root chord, like I'm hitting this C right now.
Right.
Thumb, pointy, ring are my go-to fingers. The middle finger is just kind of waiting to do something.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, for me, it would usually either be 1-2-3, thumb, index, middle, or index,
So
middle, ring.
You do use your middle finger on the chord.
Yeah. Sometimes, but again, if I try to go thumb, middle, pinky, that feels too cramped.
That explains why you can jump to those like sevenths, because now it frees up the ring finger to be the 7th
And the 8.
and the
Exactly. And And that's where it depends on also with black notes. If you were playing C sharp,
Ah. So
C sharp major,
I should
that's a
try
1, 2, 3.
incorporating my middle finger more, so
Mhm.
I get more comfortable with those sevenths. That's probably why the sevenths throw me off to use, because I'm always using my ring finger for my fifth.
Now, it's not always appropriate to throw the 7 in there. That's one place you can get in trouble too. Like if we're playing C major, for example, and we're going through, like you could do the major 7 on that first C. Sounds nice, right? And you get a minor 7, and then a minor 7, major 7. But now this one, the G, that's a dominant 7 because that's the minor 7 but a major third. So that's the one that you get in trouble with, because if you tried to do that F sharp, doesn't really sound right.
It sounds like trouble.
It sounds like trouble if you're in C major, but then the minor again. And then the diminished, we talked about this before, half diminished. So it's using that minor 7, the flat 5, and the flat 3, yep. B, D, F, A is a half diminished, where it's the flat, or the minor third, the flat 5, and the flat 7. But if it was fully diminished, it would be the A flat there. But we're not going to do that, because that's just wrong. But it's fun to see the different ones, and again with the different fingerings, and by changing which key we're in, changes what Meticulous is telling us. Like right now, again, if I was playing something I was playing those, they all look flat, because it's telling me we're in C major, because I'm playing all black notes. And for C major, those would all be flat. But if I was playing, or if I told Meticulous that I was playing in the key of G flat major, then none of those would have the flat next to them, but the G flat major would have all of the flats listed, all 6 of them listed over on the staff there. Actually, let's change that real quick, because otherwise that can look intimidating. Like if you're not expecting to see 6 flats over there, and all of a sudden somebody says, "Hey, let's play in G flat major." You're like,
oh my God,
"What is
6
that?"
flats? That's
Yep.
G flat major.
That's G flat major. Yep, F and G flat, and that's why it's not F and F sharp, but it's F and G flat. Now you might be asking,
that's a bitch. I have to practice that one a couple times.
And you might be asking, there's only 5 black notes. How do we have 6 flats?
Well, you've got this one's a flat technically too, isn't it? The F.
Nope, the F is the one that's okay. It's the C flat. We go with G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat. That B is actually a C flat.
Oh my God. I'm thinking like, wait a minute. Yeah, you're right. The B is actually a C flat in this one.
And that's where 6 flats gets confusing.
Yeah,
but that's the
pretty
G
much
flat.
everything is flatted.
But if you were playing,
except for the F.
the one right before that would be the D flat major, right? Where the D flat major only has 5 flats. So that you're using the F and the C, neither one of those are flat. So those are the 2 white notes that you're using. The other 5 are all flat. But with the G flat, yeah, you get that extra C flat that messes you up.
Down. You know, you do it a couple times, it actually does feel natural.
And the most important part is that it sounds right. Like if you're doing it and you hit a wrong note, it definitely sounds wrong, and you're able to fix it quickly because you recognize that it's not the note that you're looking for.
And it rolls nice. I mean, you know, compared to other scales, this is not one that, like, the claw does not feel that normal. You
Yep.
have to look at it.
And also try the D flat major, because that's 5 flats, keeping the F and the C in there.
Hold on, I'm just getting used to this one.
Well, this one, it feels almost the same is the reason.
probably the most complex scale that I've played yet.
Yep. It's going from C being the easiest, no sharps and flats, jumping all the way to the bottom of the circle of fifths, where you now got 6 flats up in there.
Well, going for a major scale like that, where you are predominantly playing on the black keys, this one really is surprisingly not uncomfortable.
One thing I always like to do when I'm doing scales like that is
I just had to do it a couple of times.
Oh, yeah,
you know, just to feel it out.
And every once in a while, throw in the triad, so you hear the major triad in there, because that should also ring to your ear that that's the major for that.
I'm just trying to roll down.
I like it.
Take me some time to get comfortable with playing chord progressions with that scale, but
and then you did. The simplified version would be the G flat major pentatonic. Just the 5 black notes.
Lyrics to that cipher.
Just the 5 black notes.
I will try to kill that shit for you. It's going to take me a little more practice. This is a crazy ass scale that got me on.
G flat major.
But it is nice. Because normally I would play something like that in C, the progression.
Nice. The full walk.
Trying to do it in this scale until I get the total clause.
And that's where, again, having so many black notes helps. It's almost all in the right place.
I like the brightness of this scale for that progression.
Oh yeah,
it's a little sadder than
absolutely
if you play it in C.
Definitely, and that's the thing is each scale does have its own character, even if you're playing the same notes, relatively speaking. Because again, like I said, you could just shift your keyboard up from C, transpose it up to G flat, and then you just play the same thing, all white notes, and it would sound that same way.
Okay, so if I was to transpose that,
yep, it would be up to
1, 2,
6,
3, 4, 5, 6. So now technically I should be playing it, even though I'm playing C.
Yep.
Does sound good.
And see, that's how you technically, we said that's cheating, but it's not cheating. I understand, but that is technically how you could cheat, where if you only wanted to play it, because again, if you're comfortable playing all white notes, which that's one of the easiest ways to play piano, is leave all the black notes out. You're just playing all the white notes. You're in the key of C. you can use the transpose button and change to any other key. That's one of the most drastic shifts you can do right there, where you're going from no sharps and flats to 6 flats.
Yeah, that lets me play in that hard ass scale in a way that I am more comfortable with, because I can. And I could never play that. I mean, I will eventually be able to play it.
Oh yeah, you'd be surprised how easily you can play that right now, even because of the fact that it is so many notes that are shifted to the black keys that it is almost the same as playing all the white notes, because you're just playing all the black notes and just have to feel your way around the E and the C.
And
sorry, the B.
That was G flat. That's the C major version. You really hear the tonal difference. It's a whole different texture.
Definitely. But that's where, again, any song that you're doing, you can shift to any key, and sometimes it'll sound different. Most of the times it will have a slightly different character.
Cypher, if you want that piano progression, if you go look in my bands, there's one called Piano Works. There might actually be two in there. My Piano Works band, all my piano progressions and things I'm playing, they're all in there. They might be in parts, but if you find one that you like, let me know, and I can rearrange those parts.
Exactly.
I've had a couple people actually start for my piano work collection so that we built a song.
Now, did you have another song that you wanted to get to?
I did have a killer orchestration.
Nice.
That Sam sent me. This one you're in for a treat.
Nice.
He's also doing the which one is it? I think it's this one. He's also doing the skirt contest this month. I think that's the one looking for original songs. And he's just such an awesome composer, arranger. Like, this is a work of art.
Yeah. Nice little positive comment from Tony right there at the top.
Oh yeah. He is one of my favorite composers on the lab.
Yeah, absolutely. Always good stuff. Awesome.
Takes my breath away with that one.
Yeah, yeah. We got to make sure that we get you muted on both those machines, though, because I think the one on the other side there's giving a little bit of wish still. When we
Yeah,
have music playing.
I think my flip up mic might be acting up. When I go out with the wind out there, I think it's blowing. Yeah,
It's getting all in there.
That might be it.
Could be. Main thing is if both channels are hard muted, it should be good.
Yeah, I hard mute on the mic, on the mixer for this one.
Cool. But yeah, Sam's is definitely awesome. Were there collaborators on that one?
No, I think this is one of his instrumentals. Nice, beautiful, original. It's perfect for this contest. You guys give him some love. Show him how awesome that piece is.
Excellent.
What I liked is how, he changed the emphasis from piano to drums to strings. Each one of those layers had their moments in the song where they took over, and how he brought the piano in for a little bit and then brought back the string theme. The string theme was there throughout, but it was an accent. It was the way he hits with his orchestral attack is why he's one of my favorites.
Nice.
He thinks like a composer should when it comes to strings. How they hit off time, on time, just a great approach all around.
Mm-hmm. Definitely cool. And like I said, it's for the contest. And there's a few others. When is the contest drawing again? Or the final date?
Skirt, I think, is the September. One of the 3 for September. It's the only one that's looking for original music. So you guys writing original music, check that contest out.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And if you like that song, go give it a like and help him.
Yeah, yeah. Very cool. And for me, it's all about which chords feel like they go together and which way it's moving and all of that, whether it's a song like that or whether it's just anything that you come up with or anything you're going to explore, whether it's more comfortable.
I recognize a couple of his progressions in there. They're like mine. It's the other reason why I like him. I relate to his chord choices, his progression approach, the hitting style. They all feel comfortable to me.
Nice. Yep, yep. Now, if we were to change to something like D major, for example, only 2 sharps.
D major. D major is the Andrew Fine key.
There you go. D minor, not so much.
D minor, when I go after D minor, it's like A. A major, A minor, the relationship between them. D has the same kind of relationship with the minor versus the major. They both feel similar in their tones.
Mm-hmm. What I like about A major and A minor, and D for that matter as well, is when you're looking at, for example, here's A major, but the 3 sharps. But if you do A minor, it's no sharps. Because minor, you're flatting those 3 particular notes, and that gets you back to the relative to C major.
Yeah,
so that one I like for that reason.
Relative keys, for those who are new to music theory, the first things when you're starting to grasp scales is to get that whole major minor relative thing. You want that to click in, because once you learn one scale like C major, then you know A minor. It's just a matter of where the emphasis is going. If A is where you're starting, then you're going to have a minor sound, and where you go will lead from that minor starting chord.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes with the minor and major pentatonic, where the A minor pentatonic and the C major pentatonic are are the same notes, just shifted over. It's whether you're starting and ending on the C, it'll sound like a C major pentatonic. If you're starting and ending on the A, it'll sound like an A minor pentatonic. It all depends on where the emphasis is going. And of course, you can start and end on the other notes as well, and see. That's the other part of the exploration that I really like, is just always to like start ending phrases on different notes and see how it feels. Because ending on the third, for example, feels really nice because it's still trying to move somewhere. It's how you can carry a phrase across the bar, is instead of starting and ending on the one, start on the one, get the phrase moving, but instead of coming back to the one, be ready to end on the three. It basically gets you to where.
The three does feel like it wants to resolve though. Like
I was thinking more
in that scenario,
more of a melody though, rather than the chords themselves. More like as you're playing against a chord progression that's going on, you're just doing a regular melody line. The melody line, instead of having the melody line go, and always ending back on that C, have the melody line end on the E, instead of ending on the one. And then it's like when you're playing along to something that's going on, like for me, if I'm playing along to a Grateful Dead song, for example, I will find that Jerry Garcia tends to like to land on the three a lot in those situations. Sometimes the five, sometimes the three, rarely the one, but sometimes the one as well. But it's one of those things where those are the strong chord tones, and that's where you're getting the strongest feel across.
Ones tend to hit on the measure.
Right. And that's where since there's so many people in the band with something like the Grateful Dead, you've already got the bass player playing the one, and you've got another guitar player who might be playing the one, or something accenting something higher, so he can get away with playing the three, and that way they're emphasizing different registers. And they also have a keyboard player, so I mean they have a lot of people there, so like everyone's filling in their own spot, and they kind of work all off of each other and with each other as well.
So it kind of depends on whether you are a rhythm player or a lead player,
and who you're playing with and what they're tending to play. Because if the bass player is always going to be hitting the one on the one, then if you're always coming back to the one, then you're always going to be playing the same thing he is on that spot. Whereas if you tend to mix it up, and sometimes you're coming back and hitting the five, sometimes you're coming back and hitting the three, not as a chord, but just that note in the melody. That way you're helping to frame out the chord.
And rhythm players tend to approach more with chords, and rhythm players tend to fill things out more than lead players. Lead players are the ones kind of going up and down the modal scale.
Yeah, but I also see rhythm players a lot of times won't play on the one. Like they'll be hitting on offbeats. So they might come in with one strong on the one sometimes, but like a lot of times they'll just be waiting. Like the chord change will happen, and they'll be hitting little offbeat chirps. Again, it depends on the style of music.
Well, and in the case of, like, say, the bassist, he doesn't necessarily have to hit the root note as long as he's hitting one of the chord notes, especially if it's the fifth. Certain ones will.
But a lot of times, the bass will be going for the one on the measure, because if you're hitting the fifth, you could be sending bad signals to your band, where like it might be an interesting choice, like a choice that sounds good, but your band might be going, wait, we went to the five, and like everybody jumps thinking that that's the new chord. So like you got to be careful with that, and that's where the bass player will frequently have, like, that's the one job is get in on the one with the right note for that chord, and then work from there.
Bands tend to follow drummers and bassists, so if somebody's hitting something confusing, when you see the rest of the band turning their heads, they're usually looking at either the bassist or the drummer to say, what are you doing?
Yeah. And a lot of times, like, I'll see those situations happening. Like, again, I work with a lot of bands, and, most of them, like, almost none of them make any mistakes, right? But, like, when there's that one thing where somebody almost screwed up, or you could see that somebody was about to miss a signal or whatever, and then, like, to see the reactions of the other people in the band, and the most professional of the bands, there's no reaction. Like, you wouldn't know anything. Or, like, if they're going to look over, like, they very slowly start looking over like they were going to anyway, and then go back to what they were doing. It's not like, hey, like staring at the person who just messed up, like, hey, what did you do? Because nobody needs that. We're a team up here, right? So it's like, unified front. Like, you meant to do that. Yeah, we're good.
You get the scowl.
And that's the thing is, if it's a really sour note, or if it's timing that throws everyone off, or again, if it's a bass thing and you're hitting a note where you're trying to be, super special about what you're hitting, and it's something that's, I hit the sharp 4 because I felt like whatever, and everybody else in the band is like, we went to the what? And so, like, if a train wrecks the band, it's no good. So
See,
it's all about the results there.
I wish I was more of a soloist and had that freedom to really experiment with the different notes you can be playing, especially in between the progression.
Mhm.
When you are a rhythm player, which I think that's where I am, you don't want a sour note in your chord
Right.
ever.
Yep. Yep. That's also
Otherwise,
where
the chord starts to fall apart.
suspended chords come in too. Like right now we're talking A minor, right? That's the key I'm looking at. But if I said A minor sus4, or I guess maybe A sus4 and A sus2. So you're basically holding that A and the E, and you can hit any of the other three white notes. And that's the sus4 and the sus2, and then the minor third.
And the sus4 really wants to move somewhere.
Right. And with both the sus4 and the sus2, you're kind of surrounding the note, so it's more like you can do like little melody lines around there to just to kind of be able to sound like you're moving somewhere without getting anywhere. But at the same time, you can also, of course, use the other chords that go in with that A minor.
See, I've got a progression, something that I wrote that utilizes the second and the fourth. And the second and the fourth can really sound beautiful
Exactly.
when you use them that way.
Mm-hmm.
They're like they're mediator notes.
Exactly. That's how you can build a groove out of just knowing what chord it is.
And normally, those would sound a little clashy,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do it right, especially with the like third kind of moving to the second, back to the third, back to the fourth.
And I really do like the visualizer that you got there too, because that definitely very clearly shows what's happening.
Well, and it really helps to make a second and a fourth sound like they belong.
Exactly. So the sus2 and the sus4, those are pretty commonly used, and for that reason, because they give you that either floaty feeling or undecided, because you don't have to commit to major or minor. So like if you're coming in on the one on something, I would probably jump to that sus2 before I would jump to the sus4 if I wasn't sure if it was a major or a minor. Or I would just keep it as a 5 chord where I'm just hitting the root and the 5 and listening for whether it sounds like the major or minor coming, and then you could add that 3 in there if you want. This is where if you're not sure, if you're just jamming and you don't know what's happening.
In this progression, the 5 and the 1 really keep the whole chord together. So as long as these two are, as long as
And
those two are doing their job.
You could also be alternating those two if you wanted to.
So the 1 and the 5 really keep it glued, and 3, 2, 3, 4 jumping is just having fun.
Oh yeah. And I'll always love surrounding the note, where if you wanted to end off on that G, for example, you can, where you're hitting like a half a tone above and a half a tone below. Could be chromatic, it could be in the key you're playing in. Just adds that little something. And it shouldn't be all the time though. That's one of those things that just every once in a while as a little something accent instead of doing something all the time like that.
Yeah, with the progression like that, I'm really just playing those thirds. You know, that third is just kind of, you know, that is where there's a little bit of melody. But adding the fifth in there to give it a nice full chord. And it leads to that G very nicely.
And that's the thing is making that a little 2-chord back and forth like that. I love things like that, where in that case it's A minor and G. And so you've got a minor chord to a major chord right below it. You can use all different combinations. You know, it could be 2 major chords. You could be going back and forth between, say, you know, D major and C major.
Now,
You know,
I've
and
tried
trying
that
things
with
like that.
I've tried that on the major side too. It is nice, but it has a different feel. I feel like I'm writing a Journey song.
That's one way.
It's a little harder for me to actually write with that kind of progression on the major side.
And it also depends what chords
it
you're
really
using.
feels good in minor.
Because to me, actually, if it was going to be 2 major chords that were right next to each other, or I should say a whole step away, it would be better to do G major and F major, because that way we're still in the main key of C, where you're still using all the white notes.
Yeah, G works nice for that. Again, a Journey song.
With a little blast of brass. But I like, you know, that's 2 majors back and forth. You can also do, if I was doing 2 minors back and forth, I would probably do E minor and D minor, because that way, again, we're still dealing with all white notes.
Yeah, and E minor and D minor can work together. I mean, it sounds a little off, but at the same time, it's workable.
What if it started with the D minor?
Oh, start
And then
with
the
the
D
D
minor.
and then go to the E.
I'll start with the D and then the E. Because those would be like the 4
Now I
chord and the
feel
5
like I
chord.
want to go up.
Because then the resolve would be like to the A minor is where I would resolve that.
Yes, and the A would be.
That's where it feels like it wants to land.
Uh-huh.
Because technically, again, that's why I try to frame everything related to the C major. Because in this case, where we're doing minor chords, so the 6, the 2, and the 3, the A, the D, and the E would be the 3 minor chords that I would be focused on. So if I'm doing 2 things back and forth, and I wanted them to both be minor, I would do that, you know, the D minor and the E minor, for example, as a starting point. If I wanted a major and a minor, your choice of the A minor, A minor and G major were a good choice. I like that. I could also try to do it as like a D minor, C major is another way to look at that.
Oh, I've actually done something with that approach, D minor to C. That's what we were playing around with earlier. I'm the water to your flame.
There you go.
fifth in there.
Yeah, I like that.
Just for fun.
The Barry sax.
Yeah, it's got some grunt.
Definitely, especially when you get down there. But I like that. And again, for songwriting, this is all just fun stuff to just take little pieces because these are Lego blocks. So you're getting the feel, or as far as getting your ears wrapped around. Okay, this is two major chords back and forth. This is a minor on top and a major on the bottom. What about the other way around, with the major on the top and the minor underneath? So if we were to go with the, let's say, we could do like,
Eventually I would like to color code my scales and my keys. The same way some of the videos we've watched and how like they color code, it seems like there's a little bit of a standard there with the colors of the rainbow and the relation to different notes.
Some of it was that tonnage chart that we looked at, where it showed the relationship, where you're looking fifths this way and thirds that way, and major thirds this way, minor thirds that way. And once you get a feel for what directions, what you're actually getting just from that whole chart, you get so much information, and you can see what relative chords you might want to use, because you're sharing the two chords, like we said, the two notes, like the C and the E.
How you relate those sounds to your own perception of color, because right now, I guess C is the blue for me. I think, to me, that would be my first choice for the color, although it's probably not the right choice. Might not be the one that they all relate to that note.
But that's also where I like to start with that, just for comfort of all being white notes and just not having to worry about, oh, does this scale have two sharps in it or three flats, or what we're working with. So if you start with that C just from the concept stage, you can always shift to a different key, like we just said a minute ago. We can shift to that that G flat major.
I would love to make my own custom keyboard where, based on the notes and the color programming, when just like these visuals, which I can probably do it through the visuals easier than I would making a keyboard, but associating color to notes and shifts of color to chords or in a scale, I think is going to be an interesting way to visualize sound.
Yeah, and like we were saying about the reading, on the reading music side, like if I'm in the key of A minor, or in this case A minor C major, all white notes, hitting those three, seeing those stacked thirds, that tells you that's a major scale. If you were trying to hit a minor, it would show you that it's, in this case, it's saying it's sharp because I'm in A minor. But if I were shifted to C major, it would be showing C major. So it'd show that it's flatted, right? So that's the third, and now it's flatted to make that into the minor. But you're still seeing that it still shows in the same position on the staff, where that's still the three circles. This is just telling you that it's flatted compared to not being flatted like it says on the staff. But if you were now playing a sixth chord, like, you see how, since they're right next to each other, you wouldn't normally play it that way because it sounds kind of weird. Like you might put it on the bottom, and that turns it into an A minor 7.
But it sounds better on the bottom.
Because they're stacked thirds like that again. So you can see, because of the way they're stacked like that, they're stacked the way they should be.
So
in
not only do they arrange themselves nicer on the staff, but they actually arrange themselves nicer in the sound layer.
Yep.
Interesting.
And then below that, if we were to add an F, that's a 9. So we're adding a 9 in there.
That's a full staff.
Because that's an F. Because it would basically consider the lowest note to be the root. So now it's considered an F major 7, 9. And then if you add the D at the bottom, D minor 9, B minor 7, flat 9, flat 5. Chords start sound, but I mean, this is still just adding another third on white notes going lower.
Go after the fucking hardest chords and scales.
Well, in this case, this is just going mathematically. This is just adding notes that way. If we went the other direction,
but that's a weird.
If we went the other way, we end up with the E minor 7, the G7, which is the G dominant 7, Then you get to that B minor 7 flat 5, which is a little more normal. D minor 7, F major 7, G7. But yeah, it's just by staying in the key that you're trying to deal with and only hitting the notes that are in the key, you just move the different chords up and you see how they feel and see which ones you want to land on. See for progressions. Most of the time, people are leaving the 7 out. So you're basically dealing with the 1 through the 6, 1, 4, 5 being major, 2, 3, 6 being minor. So you've got 3 of each. And again, if you want to deal with ones that are next to each other, I would either use the 2 and the 3 that are next to each other if I want 2 minors. I'd use the 4 and the 5 that are next to each other if it's 2 majors.
Yeah,
and if I
the
want a
seventh
major and a
always
minor,
ends up. The 7th always ends up the bastard child in
it does. You can get away with using a minor in there if you're just using a triad. That minor with the flat 5 would be the way to go with it.
Well,
So
if you really got
like the
balls, we'll go with 9ths.
You got to be careful with that when you start going into those.
Aren't there also 13ths?
Oh yeah. There's actually, because if you look at it, if we take the stack from that C major, right? Just starting with the C major, we're doing the 1, 3, and the 5, right? So 1, 3, 5, 7 is B, 9 is D, 11 is F, 13 is A, and that's all the notes right there because that's 1, 3, 5, 7, and essentially 2, 4, 6, which you can bring down here.
Now, you're not likely to play those all at the same time, but
Exactly.
how you utilize them.
The point is
as
which
you
ones to
rip
leave out.
across a chord.
The point is to which ones to leave out. So again, in that case of the C, you got the triad, you're dealing the 1, 3, and the 5. If you're adding the 7, okay, 4 notes, that's not bad. But if you're going to add a 5th note, a lot of times they would leave out the 7 or they'd leave out the 5. So let's say we're definitely keeping the root and the 3 because that's what tells you strongly which, whether it's major and minor and what the actual root note is.
And if you think of this with instrumentation, like you could have 2 instruments covering all the normal 1, 3, 5 notes and one of the brasses or something hitting those 7s and 9s.
Yep. And if you leave out the 5, because that's
breaking
the most,
it up
that's
into
the most
instruments
irrelevant.
can make some of those notes that would normally sound good when they're all the same sound. When you break the sound up into different instruments, sometimes those notes add a whole new layer on top of
and even splitting them
rhythm
and splitting them in different registers. Even with one instrument, if you were to play like we did before with like the root and 5 down at the bottom and then 2 other notes up top, we were doing in C major, for example, we were doing root 5 at the bottom, and if it were to 3 and 7 up here for a major chord. But if we were doing instead something where we're trying to get 7s or 9s in there, we could keep that root and the 5 at the bottom, or we could keep the bottom to be the root and the 3, and now on the top we could do the 7s, 9s, 11s.
I like how Meticulous says perfect 5th.
Yep, because that's the perfect.
It's
fifth
almost
and perfect
like
fourth.
Reinforcing. You just played the perfect 5th.
Perfect.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Perfect. And right between there is no tritone.
You're trying too hard.
That's the one that. There's only a couple songs that actually use that
Or
particular
it's
note
speaking
purposely.
to me. It's saying tritone.
Technically, when you play those two together, it actually there's a third tone that your ear hears that is lower than both of those. And it's like down halfway, half an octave below both of them. But that's one of the ways that you can actually get lower than the lowest note on your instrument. Like with my bass, I can play that low B and then the F on the next string up, and that's a tritone. That's a. And you're hearing a third tone that's down below that. You don't hear it as much with this particular sound, like a clarinet. But when you're doing it on the bass, for example, you'll hear that third note like vibrating in there because it's a resonance that builds up. Vibrating in there because it's exactly. That's what I was saying.
Did I throw a looper in there?
I love it.
I had to refresh.
Oh, you had good timing. Clarinet's
What's funny how some of those notes relate with each other, but when you hit them together, you have one kind of effect, which can be really dissonant or sharp. And when you play them in progression or in a sequence, how those notes can have a powerful effect in the progression.
One thing when we were talking before about the stretch, the amount of notes that I can cover, covering like the root down there, And that's just like with the left hand covering from the root up to the next E is the root, and then the 10th, which is the third. And then if I went,
Play a 10th.
yep. And then if I added, if I wanted to get the, you know, the five, then 7 and the 5 in there, and that kind of stretches the chord out and spreads it. But I could also do from that to the, so getting the C down there, then the E up here, the B,
See, and again,
the D
I'll
up there.
go back to instrument sound choice.
Mhm.
When you're playing chords like that, if
Mhm.
you hear an instrument where it's a mono instrument, you
It'll
know.
cut out, yeah.
Yeah, if you're used, like we're used to hearing flutes and clarinets a certain way, you don't hear clarinets play chords.
Right. But you can hear a section of clarinets
can
where
hear
each
a
one's
section, yeah.
playing that chord. So technically, when you're playing the chord on here, it's assuming that it's an orchestration where you have 4 clarinets each playing a part. If you're playing a four note chord with a clarinet,
Yeah,
but a
if
piano.
if you pick your instruments for your parts properly,
Mhm.
you'll spread those notes across with the instruments.
Mhm. And just being able to stretch like or spread the sound across the spectrum.
And
Gets you
when
like-
you're picking instruments, if you're trying to play like a full chord held together like that,
Mhm.
don't pick a flute. Don't
Yep.
pick an instrument
Or a tuba.
that doesn't do that.
Or a tuba or a slap bass. I mean, any of those, they'll definitely muddy up the sound space too much. But violin is a good example of something that you could choose that
Oh,
you
yeah.
wouldn't. I mean,
Well,
you wouldn't
you
play
know.
chords on a violin, but you could hear a violin section very easily.
Yeah. How
Orchestration like that.
four part violin attacks a progression is beautiful.
Exactly.
Or a
Try that.
quartet like violin, cello, viola. What's the other one? Contrabass.
Yep. Those are all violin, but normally you wouldn't have a violin playing down there.
I
But
might
that's not
throw a
bad.
violin down there once in a while, just to compete with the viola.
Violin sounds pretty good though. And again, that's another like who bends on a violin?
I'm speaking to whales.
Red alert. But the viola.
See, and those who want to improve their arranging and composing skills, learning a 4-part approach, whether it's a string quartet, whether it's a cappella, barbershop, or
And remember, it doesn't have to all be
brass
crunched right
quartet.
together. It doesn't have to all be crunched together. You can throw one note down low.
Study any of those quartet approaches with those types of instruments, and it will help you tremendously with your own arrangements.
Some of the other secret sauce is having a melody line that essentially transfers through each of the different layers, right? Like, so you've got the melody line where you're emphasizing that highest note, and then the next one you're emphasizing that middle note to like have the melody kind of. Like if you wanted to do that, you'd be emphasizing, you know, each of those notes individually in the midst of a chord. So that's one of those that you can use if you're doing a MIDI thing. You can add intensity to the individual notes to have them stand out more, and then you'll hear that melody line coming through that chord structure, which is how you get movement happening from this chord to that chord, or you get a walk down or a build up, or
that's a big key to everything is movement.
and chord tones.
It's why they call like things movements in classical pieces, because they do.
Yep.
Oh,
And that was
got
another
the
one.
Snave in the house.
Snavey
Somebody get me a doctor.
It's happening. And that's one where sometimes some phrases will feel like they're pulling up, and some phrases will feel like they're pulling down. So like with, you know, minor, those first 3 notes of C minor, or, you know, A minor, it just like feels like it wants to come back down, right? But if it was the first 3 notes of C major, it might feel like it wants to pull up towards the G, you know, something like that. So different phrases will pull different directions depending on
Never
what you have.
ignore your feelings. Like
Mhm.
if what you're playing with feels like it wants to go in a certain way,
Explore
try it.
it.
I
Yeah.
mean, I understand the musicians who say, I want to do something different. So they go against the grain and they try to write something that hasn't been done before.
Mhm.
And it's good to have that attitude. But at the same time, if you try something and it doesn't feel right to your ears, to your fingers, you don't need to force music that way.
Right. But recognize that
It
like you
should
can add it to your
feel
vocabulary though, so that if you wanted that sound, it might not be what you want for this song. It might not be something that sounds right ever. But if you're trying to build tension somewhere, that could be the way to do it, right?
bingo. If tension is the key, I'm writing a horror soundtrack and I really want to shake up the viewer for a second. Like, ooh, Michael's attacking, going against the grain there and making something that clashes hard or sharp has that kind of horror effect. You're not going to write a radio hit with that, but you might be the next John Carpenter making horror music.
And the tension in metal, yeah.
Use
That
it in its
flat
proper
two
place
helps a
and
little bit.
don't try to shove that sound into commercial radio, because commercial radio will never accept that kind of extremity. Oh, and like Snave saying, the tension in metal, the one exception when it comes to like certain genres like metal, you can do shit in metal that you wouldn't be able to get away with in other genres as easily.
Mm-hmm.
Which goes back to our pop to metal challenge. It's going to be interesting to see how how the commercial poppy sound blends with these metalheads that are experimenting the fuck out of BandLab.
And that's the thing is the metal sound, adding metal to it can be done numerous ways. It could be made fully into a metal song, or it can be just adding metal elements to a song that's already pop, right? Or has pop elements to it.
Yeah, and I
Make a
asked them, like,
combination of your own.
what makes it metal? When they give you this, what is the thing that is it? The guitar? Is it the distortion? Is it the change in BPM? Or
Is it the blast beats? Is it the I'll know it when I hear it? That's my favorite.
and then on the flip side, like, what makes it pop? Because it's
Yep.
actually easier for me to describe metal than it is for me to describe pop.
The only
Pop is
like
kind
rather
of a
than
catch-all.
right, rather than trying to say that something isn't pop, I would be if I were trying to say that something wasn't pop, which I wouldn't, because I think in this sense, in the spirit of the contest, it's taking something that is definitely not metal and making it metal. So to me, whether it's pop or not isn't the important part. Even I mean, it is important for the contest, but it should be something that's pop e, and that's
Well,
where
yeah,
pop
the
elements
judges are
comes in.
probably going to judge that way. And
But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it
Snave,
shouldn't be
we've
super strict.
we've got we've got already a lot of submissions. There's about a week and a half left. Guys, get on the ball.
Yep,
September 23rd,
make it
bunch
happen.
of tracks in there, and they're going to start going through all of them. So far, everything that's come in has sounded awesome.
Exactly. And that's again, I
Very
love the way people
creative interpretations.
reimagine any song, in a different style, whether it's metal, whether it's pop, whatever it is. Trying to just reimagine it in your own way is definitely cool, and just changing elements of it to get it into a different style, whether it's again changing the drums or whether it's changing the vocal style, the amount of effects that you put on things. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways. But as far as the pop, like I would be trying to, if I were trying to tell something that isn't pop, I would try to be defining what it is. Oh no, this one is
Yeah.
more reggae, or this is more rock. Like it's not enough pop. But even those, that can be complete split of genres. It could be rock pop. It could be reggae pop. It could be
Oh,
whatever.
I
mean,
can't
you
wait
can
till we
combine
have a
all of these.
Hungarian reggae contest, because
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
gonna own
it's coming.
it.
It's coming. It's coming soon. It's gonna be fun. But that's
I
where
feel
I mean a
like
lot of
you
that's
invented the genre.
a lot of it comes just to the feel of the bass. Whatever style it is. If it is a reggae style, like so much of it depends on the bass being a nice pocketed groove, and little chirps from the guitar or the keyboard would be the style you're expecting. That's a good place for organ, like we had talked before about. You're asking me where I picture a rock organ sound coming in, and that's one of those where whether it's a rock organ or a reed organ or whatever it is, some kind of organ I think works out nicely for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Turning one genre into another could be, it's part like instrument choice, it's part attack approach or tempo shift,
Mhm.
um, adding attitude, I guess, in metal. Attitude counts.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Especially punk. Like, you know, when we start going into punk, it's all attitude.
All attitude and subject matter, of course, is important in there as well. But it's not going to be I guess the subject matter is also important there because with pump it's very rebellious in numerous ways, right? So it's something that focuses on certain styles and certain
And punk has
ideas.
like a timing approach that's different than the other genres. You know, the timing approach with punk isn't rock or metal. They grab from there a little bit, but they throw in a little swagger to their tempo.
And should it always sound a little more raw? I mean, it depends on what you're kind of trying to go
Garage
for.
band
But
sound, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And again, some of that can be done whether it's all done post or whether it's just the way it's captured and all of that is also important. It could just be if it sounds like a room recording, like you said, garage band recording. It's just like somebody put a camera in the middle or a recorder in the middle of the room and just had the band go. Everybody screaming right at it.
And there's nothing wrong with that kind of sound. I mean, if you know that's the sound that you're looking for that song, you want that garage band sound. It's not to say you have to go record it in the garage, but you want to know what that sound consists of. So when you simulate it or you capture it, you're accenting it. You're bringing that sound out. Because there's nothing wrong with the garage band sound.
Tremolo strings.
You just wouldn't want to have a garage band sound when you want to sound like you're a studio band. Or vice versa.
Tremolos.
That's what you're doing, A to E.
I'm not even sure actually what I was doing there. Like that though.
I like that. It's a nice progression. A, E, F, G.
And that E's is minor, right? So
Oh,
A minor.
Sonobus? Yeah, Snave. We are going to be testing that extensively in the next couple of months. We need to be able to get individual tracks from each musician, and unfortunately, with Zoom and those solutions, all the audio gets mushed into one audio file. Sonobus is our best hope of getting individual musicians recording at the same time and audio tracks that we can really mix.
Yeah, and the one thing that was holding you back for a while, or us from testing it with you, was your connection. And so now that we've got your connection, now we can actually check it out.
Well, shit, look, Ma, I'm on 2 cameras right now.
2.
And I even got 3 cameras on one.
I'm like, I see a lot more than 2. I see at least 5 going right there.
Yeah, but I'm only on 2.
Oh, that's true. But I can see your guitar over there. I like that.
Oh,
I like that the guitar is within arm's reach.
I almost pulled it out tonight to start getting some guitar lessons from you. But
nice.
That's going to be coming. Guitar lessons from Glenn.
Yep, I was going to switch to that
me,
too.
And you guys can learn along.
Cameras are in a pretty good spot actually for this one. Actually, I would probably use the other one. Let's see. Instead of the Meticulous, I would probably go with that one. But it's not much different.
Well, yeah,
not much different, but it has the
the cool thing with Meticulous is you can flip to the guitar tab view, and I can actually read tab faster than I can read staff.
The guitar, depending, I guess.
I can't play the tab, but I understand the tab when I see it.
Mm-hmm. One thing is I do have to mute for a second to switch, so let me do that.
That's a mighty fine axe you got there.
The old SG, my favorite. Now the other question is, I usually go with the volumes wide open, but that's definitely too much, I think.
Freaking early. It's coming through.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it's usually too loud. As far as if I use a pick, it's definitely too much with that. So I usually come in and let's go down a little ways, because like from down there, then. And again, these are the different claws that you use. Like this is the 6-string, the E shape. And we describe this as like 5/7/7 6/5/5.
Now you're tuned standard, right?
Standard tuning. Yep. And I like to do that for most of, I mean, pretty much all the time for what I do.
To be
but
considerate, if you're giving guitar lessons, start
it does help for
standard
that.
tuning.
Not only with standard tuning, but also standard like finger or hand shapes. Like if you come down to this one, and I usually just do a bar right there where we're doing, not playing the fattest string, but then doing a 5/7/7/7. And that would be the 4 chord and the 5 chord. So you can just using those two little, different shapes to get that done. But what I was getting at originally was just talking about those first 6 chords, like we were saying, the same thing that we do on the keyboard, where we say that, if we're talking C major, we're doing, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, taking those same approach for there. But like, let's say we're starting in the key of A major here. You'd have this as the 1 chord, and then the 2 chord would be minor, where you just take that middle finger off, and then the 3 chord's minor. And the next string down would be the 4 chord, which is back to this, or the bar shape. And then same for the 5 chord. And the 6 chord would be minor.
A major, D major.
In this case, it was
D's the word.
A major, it was an A major, then B minor, and then C sharp minor. And that's the one that you probably wouldn't like.
Yeah, the C minor's a little weird.
C sharp minor, actually.
Oh, C
And then-
sharp. Okay, that sounds a little better.
Yeah, because we started with the A major.
I see.
Yep, D major, and then the E major. And then the F sharp minor.
Yeah,
But the
F sharp
main-
minor is beautiful.
The main thing is that those being, with all those chords, that was only 3 or 4 different claws, right? Or 3 different claws, because that first one, like the way we'd like to describe them, that first
your
one is
hand
that
really
major
gets-
claw.
It's funny what I have to do that with my hands is sadistic compared to what you have to do on the guitar.
Exactly, because to go from a major chord to a minor, all you're doing is pulling the middle finger off. And the second and third one are the same shape, so I'm just sliding that up exactly as it was. And then the 4 and 5 are both the same shape, which are this little bar shape. It only takes 2 fingers to do the 4 strings, because that top one is just that 1 finger. And then the other 3 are that one barred. And then the minor one is that same shape from the first one, but brought down a string and over here. And that makes it that minor, the F sharp minor.
Yeah,
And
a
the
few
bar
of my
bar at the top.
claws in that progression are similar. The A major claw similar to the D. The 1 and the 4 have the same claw on the keyboard.
Right.
Everything else is fucked up.
What's nice about the 1 and the 4 on the guitar is those are just straight down a string. So like the 1 is here, and then to go to the 4, I just drop down a string and change to the bar string. And then the 5 is 2 frets over. And that's why those feel really nice together, because they're right together.
And it really makes it look easy when I see it on guitar. It's like, damn it, man, why can't I just slide my hand?
And now in the same way, that was the 1-4-5 for the major, right? And if we went up to that 6, where we had the minor, the 6, the 2, and the 3, we're right there and there. So those are all right together also. The 6 is here, the 3 is right below it, and the 2 is right behind it. So you can always find, and that's always going to be the case with the guitar when you're looking at the root being on the fat strings. They're always dependably, if you're in standard tuning, you know, this one is to get to the 4th is always going to be that, and it's always going to be 2 frets over to get to the 5th. So you can always find your way with those couple, just 2 different claws, making yourself, you know, able to get from here to there.
Well, getting my guitar in tune is going to be my first challenge. I'm afraid when I try to play that thing, it's going to disintegrate.
There's definitely tuning is important.
I haven't played it since I was like in Dallas, in Texas, which goes back almost 20 plus years.
Right. So the strings are definitely due for a changing, I would bet. And that's where, for me, like some people when they play, I guess it's the oil in the hands or the moisture or whatever, sometimes the strings start like rusting right away. But with me, like strings seem to last a long time. Even if I'm playing, you know, hours a day, the strings just seem to stay pretty good for a while. I mean,
Well,
they
if
eventually start to sound a little dead, but
if you're utilizing the strings, they stand a better chance than if they sat around for 20 years not being utilized.
yeah, because if they're sitting around, they might just oxidize. But it also depends again on whether they were clean when they were put away or whether they had, you know, finger grease on them and all that kind of thing. Some people get like, you know, they wipe down the guitar as soon as they finish and all that with a cloth, or they spray it down, and that just helps it to last longer. Actually the fretboard's getting a little dry.
Guitarists take care of their strings.
I do need to like oil the fretboard because it does look a little bit like it's getting a little lighter on the top section here, and I think that's just it getting a little bit dry. So I'll probably haven't done that in a while. But there's even the spray called Finger Ease that is also not bad for the wood, and that'll help to mitigate that as well. But yeah, so as far as the those chords, I mean, just knowing those 6 chords with just a couple of positions of the different claws makes it easier. The other one is in the same thing. If we were using that same A major, but instead of using the full 6 string thing, we just use the 4 skinny strings. It's the same chord shape, but instead of borrowing the whole thing, we're just not playing the fat one. The fattest 2, like I have my thumb stopping the first one, the fattest one, and my ring finger's kind of touching that one to stop it from ringing. But the other 4 are in the same place that I was playing them as these, but I'm just leaving out the fat 2 because that's also still the same note at the bottom. That's still an A, and this is actually the way a major chord normally goes because that's root 3 5 root. And that's why that sounds nice and pretty, because that is, you know, the way you would normally be doing the chord in that shape. And if wanted to make it minor, you would just change that to a bar. So that's another nice, easy.
See, your minor shift there is so easy as a claw change.
Exactly. And that's where, again, if this was the 4 chord, and this is the 1 chord, and the 2 chord is the minor, the 3 chord. And then we switch to the next string for the 4 and the 5. And then minor here is where we go back to that first claw. But yeah, the minor, I do like the minor here, because that is just borrowing these 3. And the one that's 2 frets ahead over there. So that's like, in this case, 9 7 7 7. And it's in the right order again. So it's root 3 5 and root stacked properly. So it sounds good.
And with the whole sequence, with the strings and the strumming, I mean, everything just falls into place.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And the other thing is plucking individual strings, or if you alternate, like if you go the first string, the third string, and the second and the 4th, you can do things like that and like let those ring out. And that's one way that you can make it sound like you're doing something a lot fancier than you are. All you're doing is holding that chord shape and just plucking, you know, individual strings back and forth to make it sound good. Like that's one, like Goodbye Blue Sky. There's a few Pink Floyd songs that have like that kind of phrasing to them. whatever they
Everything
like.
I do sounds fancy, and it's not. It's an optical illusion.
Well, even the bounce that like you do on piano, like if you're doing those root and then the 3 and the 5, like boom chick boom chick, like going back and forth like that. If you try to do that on guitar, it's more difficult if you're trying to use a pick, or I mean it's not that tough, but I mean trying to get it to ring out the first note briefly and then
And that's where I like to get fancy. I'm not a fancy player, like my scales and all of that. That's not my forte. But when it comes to bounce and approach there, that's where I do like to get fancy. That's where I try to find myself as an artist. Like,
Mhm.
what's my attack?
Right.
And it's the only place nowadays where you have a chance to be original, because the notes themselves, the progressions themselves, they've all been done. But when you can change the bounce, when you can change the attack and approach, that's how some artists end up standing out. It's like Eric Clapton playing Layla acoustic style versus playing Layla with the band.
I'll listen to it any which way.
Oh, yeah.
It
But
always sounds
they are two different styles, and the acoustic one is the Clapton bounce.
good. Hmm.
It's that blues bounce that is a part of his style. Especially when you're talking with things like bass. That's where your bounce and your attack identify you more as a musician than the notes you're playing.
True. And one that's one that I
Geddy
always like
Lee,
is
if
oh
I
god.
was to pick one.
That's the one, Half the World that I was talking about. That's one that I definitely want to do. Cover that one. I haven't done. Apologies to RJS. I haven't finished Villa Strangiato yet. We started working on that
Hey,
like
dude,
six.
I'm
Was that 6
surprised.
months ago?
If I had to learn that from scratch, I would be still working on it myself.
I mean, the first attempt going through actually went pretty well, but I went back and revisited a few times, and just each time I wasn't getting the spots that I really wanted. So I gotta work the chops up and get back in there because that is an awesome one. And this is where the intonation we were talking about before. The low B doesn't always sound like it's in, so I gotta double check that.
Is it tougher adjusting the intonation on basses than guitars
It's more that it's harder to hear, like
because of the
that harmonic right
tone?
there, like hearing the harmonic and then fretting the note. Those should be the same note, and they're pretty close. So they're all pretty good as far as the intonation goes. But sometimes it feels like that one. Sometimes it's because I'm bending it a little bit, like I'm pulling the string a little bit to the side, and that makes it sharper.
Yeah, you're pulling a James.
If you're muscling it too much, and that's, I mean, it's a fat string, but if you're hitting it too hard, that can happen. But it's also a lot of times I'm only using the fattest string if I'm playing low, very low down here, to get those lowest couple of notes that I can't get elsewhere. Or also if I'm doing patterns, and now and again, I pulled it.
Well, we're gonna have to do a special bass episode one day.
Definitely.
And hopefully I can get a bass after I get my guitar lessons.
Mhm.
That's the one I really want to learn, especially on a
Well,
5 string.
one thing is,
I don't think I want to learn bass on a 4 string. I really want to start with the 5 string.
yeah, I pretty much started with the 5, but at the same time, there's nothing holding us back from using your guitar to teach you bass, because those first 4 strings on the guitar are exactly what a 4 string bass is made of. The E, A, D, G, same exact string, same exact fretting, same positions. So the fat 4 strings on the guitar, if you just ignore those 2 skinny strings, you're playing bass.
Yeah,
So
and I
everything they were
think
doing relates. It's just the technique of playing on the fatter strings and getting your fingers, calloused. Playing the fatter strings is more of a bass thing, but
yeah, I
learning
think
the notes and
learning
the relative position is we can do on guitar.
I think learning on the guitar side and then moving to the bass will be a good evolution for me there.
Yeah, and I love it. I mean, yeah, bass, all good stuff. We're gonna probably get wrapping up here so that you can get ready for resetting and getting Soul up in here.
Yeah, we got to get ready for the mask.
Yep. The mask is
It's
incoming.
coming.
But we definitely had some fun jamming tonight. Appreciate it. Thank everybody from coming out. Good to see Snave and everybody. We'll definitely be checking out Sonibus. That's definitely on our list. It was one that we were thinking about. What was the other one that we talked about at that time?
Yeah,
Was,
Snave, get in here. Talk to me about some Sonibus in the back
yeah,
room one night.
yeah, absolutely.
If you've already got it set up, then I will connect to yours and I'll test it out that way. Would love to.
Yeah. Very cool. We will do that. And in the meantime, check this out.
Thanks everyone for coming.
We will see you next week.